This is 5 Live Formula One with Jenny Gow.
Hello and welcome to our coverage of round 15 of the Formula One World Championship. It's Bahrain, it's spectacular. The lights are shining down on the circuit, over 500 floodlights, creating what is a beautiful spectacle in Formula One racing. And it's the first night race, or dusk race, depending on if you want to be accurate, I suppose, of the season. And it's almost December. As ever, we have our panel standing by to talk you through this race. We have Jack Nicholls and Jolyon Palmer, and what a race it should be. Jack, Hamilton starts in pole position.
He does, but the battle for fourth, Jenny, is going to be thrilling today. There's no doubt about it. Albon, Perez, Ricciardo, all of that. But the battle for the race win is going to be very interesting. Hamilton on pole, and it's just a bit of unknown, actually, going into this race. With the strategy, with the run down towards the first corner. On paper, a normal Bahrain Grand Prix, Hamilton on pole position. Why have you tuned in? But actually, it could be. But actually,
to hear us being hilarious.
Yeah, exactly. But actually, this could be an interesting one this afternoon. Hamilton will want the win. He'll want to keep racking up those win tallies as he keeps racking up the pole positions and winning as many races in a season as he can, and all of that kind of stuff. But it might not be a straightforward Grand Prix. Okay, it's not going to be Turkey, but it might be interesting.
It certainly is going to be interesting, and strategy you've slightly alluded to, Jack. But Jolyon, what do you think why is strategy going to be so important in this race?
Degradation is higher than usual, one of the highest all season, if not the highest. We'll see probably 2 stops for most drivers. And therefore you have some strategy options. There's a one stop, obviously cutting out a pit stop, but having tyres that you're going to have to nurse a little bit through the race. Or do you go for a faster strategy in terms of on-track lap times, but that will require 2 visits through the pits? So that there is a bit of flexibility, which we've seen before as well in Bahrain. Sebastian Vettel a couple of years ago took a brilliant win with a one-stop, holding off a charging Valtteri Bottas. We could see something like that again today. The degradation's been a problem for the drivers all weekend.
Yeah, coming into the pits takes about 24, 25 seconds, something like that. And some saying we could even see a 3-stopper today. So high number of visits to the pit lane, which will keep us busy for sure. And when it comes to this track, Jack, I mean, some people don't get too excited about Bahrain, but it has given us some great races in the past.
It's been all right. It's got a bit of character of its own as far as Tilke circuits go, and it's an interesting one with Herman Tilke's tracks, because sort of the longer they're on the calendar, the more they get a bit of something. So Malaysia, for example, had a bit of character. Bahrain now has been on the calendar for quite a while, and it's getting a bit of character, but because it's in the desert and you run under the floodlights, and there's something a bit different about it. When you go to India or China or circuits like that, you're sort of in a bit of a wasteland where they've decided to build a racetrack, so there's not that much.
But isn't that basically what a desert is? What they've done here in Sakir, the desert in Bahrain.
There's sand, so you're like, okay, sand, desert.
Oh, a sand wasteland is better than a grass or a bog wasteland?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly.
This race used to not be a night race, or even a twilight race. It used to be in the day, and I would say it's become more characterful for some reason when the lights are on and the cars look better. And we've just had better races since it switched to a night race, which I think was in 2014 for the duel in the desert between Hamilton and Rosberg. It is more characterful, but Malaysia was good from the start. Malaysia always had a bit of something in it. Other tracks, not so much. I quite like this one.
Just over 5 minutes to go until the race gets underway. 57 laps around the 5.412 kilometre track in Bahrain. The middle range of tyres. And Jolyon, when it comes to the race start, always important, always key. Obviously, that's where you can gain loads of places. But this one, it can be pretty tough, can't it? Quite aggressive.
It's a tricky first combination, first few corners. 1, 2 and 3 are really all one combination of corner. Right, then a little left kink and then a flat out drive through turn 3, which leads you onto another straight. And we have seen before drivers end up in a bit of a tangle because it all pincers into turn 1. So then, if they all get through there unscathed, they'll fan out again and try and do more attacking or defending into turn 4. It's usually not until sort of turn 6 or even sometimes turn 11 when all the positions become a little bit more stable. So there's a lot of work for drivers to do on the opening lap. It's not like some circuits where you filter through quite quickly. There are opportunities to attack.
Silly question alert. Sparks fly from the cars in front. It's very visible because obviously it's quite dark. How distracting is that for a driver if you're trying to overtake, trying to wheel and deal your way through to the start?
Not at all. You don't even notice it. In fact, if you're noticing the sparks, it means you're right on the back of another car and you're so focused on what you're about to do, go to the inside, outside, outbrake or whatever, that you don't even know that there's sparks coming off the back of them. So it looks cool. It looks spectacular, but the drivers, it makes absolutely no difference for them.
Right, Hamilton starts in pole position, his 98th pole of his career, with Bottas alongside him. Then the two Red Bulls of Verstappen and Albon. Perez in 5th. Is he the man that we're going to have to watch out for in this race? Is he the one that threatens those big four?
I think a big question for me is what can Albon do in 4th position? Can he stick with the Mercedes and his teammate up at the front? Because if he can, then that'll go a long way to helping him retain his seat for next year. It'll be whether Verstappen can get in the mix at the start. If Verstappen can split the Mercedes at the start, then okay, and then Albon can keep close enough to not give the Mercedes a free pit stop, as we've seen so often in the past. You think back to, was it Hungary last year, where the Mercedes basically had free pit stops because Pierre Gasly was too far back in the pack. So if Albon can be a factor in this Grand Prix, then that'll help Red Bull out enormously. And then behind them, the Racing Point Renault battle is going to be pretty intense because of what's at stake in the championship for both drivers and constructors.
The Albon factor is exactly what Red Bull need to see from him to retain him for next year. He's qualified 6/10 off his teammate, but at least he's in 4th and can be a factor from where he starts. If he can get off the line 4th, which is something he's got to do because he's on the slightly sandier, dirtier part of the grid, he's got to keep that 4th place, and then he's got to drive away from the rest of the midfield. But Perez and Ricciardo, they're in their own battle in the championship as well, and they've both got really good race pace. So Albon's got to be looking ahead more than looking behind in this race. He's got to help Verstappen out.
Britwatch, Norris starts in the McLaren in 9th place. He could have got a little bit closer to the front of that pack yesterday. He lost apparently 2/10 by making a mistake in his qualifying lap. And George Russell starting 14th. Still no points for this season. Jack, are you going to bank on him getting points today?
No.
Oh.
No, sorry, not. I don't think Russell's got any hope of points today, unless something crazy happens.
No craziness today.
This is not a race that I see throwing up a curveball that Russell sneaks into the points, I'm afraid.
That is disappointing.
Sorry.
All of my hopes were set on you. Well, we still could get a Brit winning. Chances of Hamilton going from pole to the win?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even though only 3 of the last 11 have won from pole position.
What, in Bahrain or in this season?
Yes, in Bahrain.
3 of the last 11?
I know, I saved that, the best, till last.
Wow. Well,
my
I guess
work here is done.
I guess Leclerc started on pole last year, didn't he, and broke down. And then what was the year before? Well, we won't do this now, but
no,
I believe you.
that's not, because the race is going to start shortly.
That's a surprising statistic, I've got to say.
20% chance of rain is what the meteorologists say. Hashtag BBC F1 if you can chip in and keep us company during the next couple of hours as the race gets underway. And with a minute on the clock left to go, let's hand over to our commentary duo of former F1 racer Jolyon Palmer and our lead commentator, Jack Nicholls.
Thank you very much, Jenny. The tyres and the mechanics just leaving the circuit at the moment. Just 4 mechanics on each car with the tyre warmers on. And Max Verstappen, with his 3rd on the grid, is Red Bull's first top 3 start in Bahrain since 2013. Ferrari have always been the closest to Mercedes over the hybrid era. And this is Alex Albon behind him in the Red Bull, 4th on the grid for the 4th time in his career. And the tyre blankets are about to be removed. We're going to see the cars head around on the circuit. The top 11 all starting on the medium tyres. Leclerc in 12th is going to be starting on the hard tyres. Lance Stroll and then George Russell on the mediums. Sainz is starting on the softs, and Grosjean and Latifi at the back of the grid are starting on the hard tyres. The light, the final light about to go out. The green flag lap about to get underway for those of you wanting to sync up. The last red light is on, and it's just about to go out now as it ticks to 2:10 here on 5 Live Sports Extra. This is the Bahrain Grand Prix. So the cars going round then on their formation lap. Hamilton on pole position, Valtteri Bottas alongside him on the front row of the grid. Max Verstappen and Alex Albon, the two Red Bulls, in third and fourth, with Sergio Perez in fifth position. Ricciardo and Ocon, the two Renaults, in sixth and seventh, with Gasly, Norris and Kvyat completing the top 10. The two Ferraris just outside the top 10 in 11th and 12th. Vettel ahead of Leclerc. Lance Stroll's 13th, George Russell is 14th. Carlos Sainz broke down in qualifying, so he's 15th. Giovinazzi, Raikkonen, Magnussen, Grosjean and Latifi, the 20 drivers taking to the start. So the car's heading around then on what's going to be an interesting Grand Prix. This, as I say, the top 11 all starting on the medium compound of tyre. What can Max Verstappen do on the charge down towards turn one? How committed is he going to be to try and get past one or two of those Mercedes? What can Alex Albon do? Can he be a factor over the course of the Grand Prix? A lot of questions here that are set to be answered in the next 57 laps around Bahrain. Sound you can hear is Max Verstappen just going up and down through the gears as he comes up through turn 8. You know what, after qualifying yesterday, Jolyon, I was a little bit thinking, not going to be a great Grand Prix this. But the more I think about it, the more I think something could happen.
It could. Again, the strategy is going to be so important. It's kind of negated from the top 11 all starting on the medium tyre, but you've still got to look after that tyre a bit. It's not like other races where they've been able to drive pretty hard knowing it's a one-stop. Here, maybe someone will try a one-stop still from the top 11. Charles Leclerc, I'm pretty sure, will be doing that from 12th place on a new hard tyre to start. He'll just do a switch for a medium at some point, I think. There's that element in it which can spice the race up. Verstappen's got to get a good start. He's really, from the good side of the grid, the clean side of the grid, he's got to try and jump Bottas.
Hashtag BBC F1 if you want to get in touch over the course of the Grand Prix. f1@bbc.co.uk is the email address as Hamilton now comes out onto the start-finish straight. He's going to have the racing line, the outside line for the run down towards the first corner. Max Verstappen was pretty happy with starting in third place because he felt he would be on the cleaner side of the circuit. Jenny?
Yeah, if you're looking at the fastest way to do this race, it's a two-stop strategy, they reckon, coming in around lap 21. Let's see what the drivers actually do.
Indeed. Verstappen already has pointed his car quite aggressively towards the centre of the race circuit, from left to right as he's sitting in the car. And now all the mechanics and engineers in the garage are starting to get on their feet and watch what is about to unfold at the start of this Grand Prix. Nicholas Latifi in the Williams on the hard tyre, one of three drivers starting on the hards. He, Grosjean and Leclerc in 12th, is about to pull up into position. Quite a long way back from the Haas car, not quite as long a wait as Lance Stroll had in Turkey last time out. Stroll starting in 13th on the grid this time after his pole position 2 weeks ago. Here come the lights. 3 Grand Prix to go this season. Hamilton on pole, Bottas alongside him. What can Verstappen do on the charge down towards turn 1? It's a pretty bad start from Bottas. Verstappen's going to pull alongside him, and Albon's going to go to the inside of him, and Bottas has had a shocker. Already, Sergio Perez is up into third place. Verstappen is into second. The two almost touch coming into the first corner, and Bottas has been shuffled all the way down to, I think, 6th position as they come out of turn 2 and 3. Heading up towards turn 4 now. Stroll's had a bit of contact and bouncing over the curbs. Oh, big one into the wall. And that is one of the Haas drivers that has had a very, very big accident coming out of turn 2. Red flag is out. The red flag is waved. And Lewis Hamilton leads the race. It's Verstappen who's up into 2nd position. 3rd is the racing point of Sergio Perez. Albon in 4th. 5th is Ricciardo. Down to 6th is Valtteri Bottas. But it is Romain Grosjean in the Haas who's had a very nasty looking incident coming out of turns 2 and 3. It looked as though Stroll was getting involved in some fighting as well. Someone went wide on the exit of turn 2. But the red flag is out after a nasty looking accident for Grosjean. He went off the circuit, hit the barrier, and then there was a sort of an explosion of flames, you have to say, that didn't almost look like it came from the car. It looked like it came from something behind the barrier, but we'll have to wait and see what's happened there. Hamilton's got away well. Bottas down in 6th position, but that is a worrying one for Romain Grosjean in the wall.
What on earth did he hit?
Yeah.
He speared off to the right-hand side on the exit of turn 3. Must have had contact with Lance Stroll, who's dropped to the back of the field now, the 19 that are still going around. And then as soon as he hit the wall, there was a huge plume of flames. There must have been something that's just caught alight as he's hit the wall, and he's engulfed the car. The whole part was in flames. I mean, a horrible looking accident for Grosjean. Red flag immediately, and I hope Grosjean's okay.
Yeah, really, really do. We'll obviously keep you up to date as soon as we know anything about what's happened to Romain Grosjean at the start there. There's also damage on the front wing of Lando Norris, with the front left of that just scraping along the floor. The cars will return to the pit lane now as Hamilton returns in the lead. Verstappen in 2nd, Perez in 3rd, Albon 4th, Ricciardo 5th, Bottas 6th, Gasly, Ocon, Norris and Leclerc the rest of the top 10, with Giovinazzi, Stroll, Sainz, Magnussen and Vettel the top 15, Latifi, Raikkonen, Russell, Kvyat, the 19 drivers who've all come around to complete the first lap. And we're on lap 2 of 57 as the cars now come back down the pit lane. And yeah, that damage on the front wing of Lando Norris, they'll be able to change that behind the red flag, which will give us a little bit of a delay here. And everybody now will get to work damaging the cars, or fixing the cars that may have picked up a little bit of damage. Jenny?
Yes, so we have an update on Romain Grosjean. It's good news. He is out of the car. He is okay. He's talking to the marshals that are down there, so that is definitely good news. It looked like a big impact. There was certainly a lot of flames, so he's now in the safety car. He's got his helmet off. He's talking to the doctor who is down there. They follow round on the first lap, so it was a very quick response to be able to help him out, and he'll be on his way back shortly. But all of the guys in the garage looking pretty concerned at this point in time.
Yep, so Romain Grosjean out of the car. Really, really great news, because that was an accident you don't really see very often. Well, the car sort of went head on into the barrier, which is not an unusual thing, but a huge explosion, basically, afterwards of flame. And Grosjean's car then bounced away from the barrier, and the flame and the fire continued almost behind the barrier. So it's as if there's something behind the barrier that was actually what caught alight. Obviously at the moment just speculating mainly, but that's how it appeared to me, that it wasn't actually the car.
It was very much like when Pablo Montoya had a big accident in NASCAR 8 years ago, and he hit a jet dryer that was behind the barriers, and it just immediately burst into flames, the whole thing. And I agree, I think there's something that was... how has the car just on its own hit a barrier and just burst into flames in the way that it did there for Grosjean? That was really scary stuff. It was the aggression of it. It was like an explosion, basically. As soon as he hit the wall, there was an explosion.
It was like a crash from the 70s.
Yeah. I'm so pleased to see Romain okay and out of the car, because that would have been such a shock. He's looking very shaken up, but I mean, that's a horrible moment.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the other drivers we saw Charles Leclerc just being told that Grosjean was okay, and the relief was evident to see in Charles Leclerc. And Grosjean now is being helped away. Yes, Romain Grosjean has had a huge accident right on the start of the first lap. He's gone into the barrier. There was then a big explosion, and Grosjean has managed to get out of the car. But one of the most unbelievable accidents I've seen in a long time in Formula One. We're under red flag conditions at the moment. Full commentary on Sports Extra when the race gets back underway, but we may well be up for a short delay. Hamilton is leading, meanwhile. Valtteri Bottas at the start dropped down to 6th. So, well, we just... yeah, we just saw, well, we're not really seeing much of the aftermath of the accident, to be perfectly honest with you. We just saw Grosjean being hobbled away to the medical car, well, to the ambulance, to be honest with you.
Now I just hope he's not hit a marshal's post or any marshals on the side of the track, because it's not a part of the racetrack that anyone would normally crash. But Grosjean's had a coming together with someone who I'm not entirely sure who it was, but someone flew off to the left. Grosjean speared off to the right, and basically he's crashed on a straight that normally you would never lose control of the car on. We're not seeing a replay of the accident. Now I've seen that Grosjean's okay, that's great news, but I hope any marshals that might have been on the side of the track there are okay as well.
Well, the red flag out then after the end of the first lap, well, halfway through the first lap. Jenny?
Yeah, obviously all of the drivers reacting in slightly different ways. Alexander Albon has gone straight down to Haas. He was having a chat with the guys there on the pit wall to try and find out exactly what was happening. Sebastian Vettel still in his car, and it is, Jolene, it's very much a case of different drivers reacting and coping with things like this in a different way. Lewis Hamilton just standing down by the pit exit, his eyes closed, his helmet off, just having a moment of reflection and kind of trying to see if he could see anything. But incidents, as you say, like this don't happen very often. It's a rarity to see big flames coming out, and it will be unsettling for the drivers now. They still have a race ahead of them.
Well, I think we're about to see what happened in a moment again, and we'll let you know what happened to Romain Grosjean and see if we can piece it together a little bit.
But that in itself is good news, because they won't show us what happened until they have sort of some positivity to it.
Yeah, indeed. So I'll let you know when we... well, OK, so we're going to see the race start again. We're getting a replay of the race start. Bottas' initial getaway was OK, but then he just didn't go anywhere.
No, and he can't really blame it just on the side of the track, because he got passed by Albon, who started 4th. He got passed by Ricciardo, who started 6th. He got sandwiched between the two and was super close to touching with Ricciardo on the outside of turn 1 as well. And he lost 4 places there, lost a huge amount. Then what happens to Grosjean further back? Oh, he gets tagged by Daniel Kvyat, I think.
And the car is in 2.
Oh, my word.
Oh, my goodness me. How has that happened? Grosjean's car has basically been halved, and I don't know how.
He's gone in straight on. He's come across. Grosjean's moved sharply across to the right. Oh, the front of the car's gone straight through the barrier. It's gone through the barrier, the first part of it. I think it's punched a hole straight through, and somehow flames just absolutely lighting up the half of the car that contains the engine. And how has Grosjean got out of that?
That is the most unbelievable accident I think I've seen in Formula One.
Miraculous, absolutely miraculous. It's a head-on accident.
I tell you what, the halo in that scenario, the car is in half. I can't express to you how much the car is in half.
It's sheared halfway through. It's sheared from the cockpit. How on earth has the car just sheared from behind? So Grosjean's ended up in the front half of the car, and then pretty much just from behind where he sits, there's a clean break in the chassis the whole way down. There's not even
basically
like
sort of behind
it still hanging on.
The survival cell, isn't it? It's basically just straight behind the seat.
Yeah,
is where it's come into.
You know what? It's not the highest speed impact we've ever seen in Formula One. The barrier was close. The barrier was close, but the speed on the exit of turn 3, he's not accelerating that much. He's probably in sixth gear, maybe, accelerating at that point. There's a lot more speed you could have to hit a barrier, and we've seen bigger impact speeds. I just don't quite know how there's that much damage. I think he's gone through the barrier.
Wow. And wow.
I've never seen anything like that.
So all I can think of is there was Alan McNish at 130R in Suzuka in practice back in 2002. He had an accident there and managed to go through the barrier and sort of split the barrier in two. The other much more tragic incident was Francois Sever at Watkins Glen back in the early 1970s. But honestly, I think that the halo there for Grosjean is going to have been a huge huge help. That is honestly absolutely terrifying, that accident.
Yeah, the front of the car, I think, is still embedded in the barrier.
In the barrier. I don't even know how he's got out of that.
No, the nose cone's gone through, and then I think you're right. I think the halo has maybe stopped the barrier, it stopped the momentum of the car through the barrier. The nose cone and the front wing went through the Armco barrier. The back of the car at some point is sheared straight through. The car is in half. Grosjean is the barrier's coming right up to the front of the cockpit. I don't know how he's got out, and I've never seen an accident anything like that.
I think it makes you realise, doesn't it, quite how spectacular these drivers are and what they put themselves at risk for to kind of entertain us and try and win a championship. But Alan van der Merwe, the driver for the medical car, and Dr. Ian Roberts, the medic and delegate, were right behind the incident when it happened, so we're able to go there and actually helped Grosjean out of the car for Dr. Ian Roberts. So he has been taken to the medical centre. He has burns to his leg and some burns to his head as well. He will receive care at the medical centre for the time being, and of course we'll update you as quickly as we can on I suppose his situation and if he's going to need to be flown out to get more medical help. But it is, I suppose, testament to all of the things that have been put in place with Formula One that I'm just saying that he's got burns to his leg and head. No matter how bad that is, the incident was quite shocking, and I'm sure there are people up and down the pit lane that are going to have to take a very deep breath before getting on with the race, and it's going to take some time as well under red flag situations now.
Yeah, this is going to be a really lengthy red flag.
Yeah.
The barrier repairs are going to be extensive. There's barely a barrier left where Grosjean hit. It's this is not going to be a quick fix. Michael Massey's down there, the race director, speaking to local officials, working out what's happening and how they can fix this now and try and get a race going. But
the scary part is that it looked as though it was the bit at the barrier that was on fire, but it turned out that was the front of the car that Grosjean was in, was where the flames were. Initially I thought the car had bounced away, and that was the bit that was not flaming, but it was the part that Grosjean was in that was up in a huge engulfment of flame with Grosjean in the car. We're just seeing a replay now, and it's really, really terrifying. I mean, look, we're glad Grosjean's out of it. It was an odd move from him to put himself in that accident overall, but that's neither here nor there, really.
Yeah, he swerved across a lot of the track and caused the accident. But, I mean, just how he's escaped from it is another story.
All the marshals and everything, there was no one at the barrier. They were a good few feet away, so there's no trouble there.
Behind the barrier, it was an access road behind the barrier and no marshal's post. So, yeah, you're right. There's nothing to worry about there. Just two pieces of Grosjean's car, and the bit that he was sitting in was properly up in flames. You do tests at the start of every season how quickly you can jump out of a car for that very reason. And you have to get out and put the steering wheel on in less than 10 seconds. And he wouldn't have been bothering about putting the steering wheel on, I can assure you of that right now. And just how he's managed to get out, having had already a huge impact. I mean, luckily that his legs were okay and everything else, because he's managed to clamber out, jump over the fence as quickly as possible amidst a fireball, basically.
Yeah. Absolutely unbelievable. But then that's the kind, obviously this will bring up a lot of safety questions and the like, but you have to say, and the whole of Grosjean's sort of helmet at is burnt and charred. But I know, it's an unusual, it's odd. Every time I watch it, the consequence doesn't quite match the accident. That's the thing I can't quite work out, is that it looks for all the world as though every time I see it again, he's going to have a hefty glancing glow with the barrier, and then that's it. That's kind of every time I see it. But every time you do see it, the car shears into and bursts into flames.
Yeah, and it was going into the wall, but the speed was not tremendous.
Yeah.
Well, Formula One cars can go astonishingly quick, 200 mile an hour plus, and Grosjean probably was about 130, 140 miles an hour at that point where he crashed. The barriers, the angle he went in, it should have been more of a glancing blow. It would have been a big impact either way. The barrier was close, but he should have rattled along the Armco in a big accident way. Safety car comes out, Grosjean's car is destroyed, but he's gone through the barrier. That's the problem. Yeah. It's the car going through the barrier, which is the danger here. If you go in at the angle he went in, relatively head-on, but with some angle. I mean, it's not even relatively head-on, actually, looking at the skid marks.
It's
from where the car...
45 degrees, isn't it?
Yeah, that should be rattling down the barrier at high speed. But the barrier seems to... Somewhere the car's snagged and it's just gone straight through, rather than deflecting any of the energy of the car. And the car's just gone straight through the barrier with no absorption of the energy, apart from just coming to a dead stop immediately. Yeah. And that's where I think the rest of it sort of comes from. But the barrier, you've got to ask questions of the barrier.
Yeah.
Is it too weak? What happens if a car hits a barrier here at a higher speed than that?
Yeah.
How has that happened?
Yeah, I think that's a big question to ask, because again, and look, I'm not saying that there should have been tyres in front of that barrier, that it should be a tyre barrier, because I understand that it isn't really a place that you hit, and that's fair enough. But I'm just trying to give some context in that, had that been a tyre barrier there, nothing really would have happened, right? He would have bounced into the tyres, and then there you go. And I'm not saying it should be there.
But the tyres then would have bounced all over the place, wouldn't they?
Agreed. But it's really strange to see that happen. I think that's kind of the point we're trying to get at, is that barrier is sort of designed for things like that. So that's why it's a strange one.
And at the moment, I really don't know how they're going to repair this. There's already, even if they repair the barrier, there's question marks about the strength of a fully not crashed into barrier. How are they going to repair this with enough structural integrity that sort of accident won't happen again? Because honestly, Grosjean is such a lucky man today to walk away from that. You'd hate to see an accident like that again, because the chances of the driver walking away from it relatively unharmed, they don't look high. So, red flag conditions still in the Bahrain Grand Prix. Obviously no word yet how long this delay is going to be, but long is the answer, because they're going to have to, because these barriers are, sunk into the ground. They're basically three strip, kind of like you see on the central reservation of a motorway. Those kind of sort of concave metal barriers. There's three of those, and they're all connected to metal poles behind, which are presumably concreted into the ground somehow. So repairing those and replacing those is going to be a huge task. Was there potentially too big a gap between the fixing points in the barrier, which has left it slightly weaker in the middle? I've never seen a barrier, just that type of Armco barrier, just not work properly. The car's gone straight through it, and I've never seen a car go straight through a barrier in this day and age.
Yeah.
So there's 19 other drivers out there that maybe will have a race. How are they going to feel going racing now, having seen that?
How are you feeling now? How would you be feeling now, do you think? I mean, obviously you can't put yourself there, but
it's just a horrible moment, and you'd be feeling uneasy. You'd definitely be feeling uneasy. The family of all the rest of the drivers would be feeling very uneasy. Just saw an image of Lance Stroll's father, who owns the Racing Point team. We know motorsport is dangerous. Formula One is dangerous. We get untimely reminders, and it really brings a horrible realization back to the motorsport community that it is a dangerous sport, that all the drivers sign up to do, but they're aware of it. But when you see things go wrong like this, and you see one of your colleagues, Romain Grosjean, walk away from what could have been a life-threatening accident, it's very difficult now, I think, for the drivers to get back in and have a normal race.
Yeah. Well, there will be a minimum delay of 45 minutes. So a minimum of a 45-minute delay. I'm just trying to think of... and then the 10-minute warning will be given prior to the start of race resumption. So I don't know if that's 45 minutes minimum and then 10 minutes, or it could be 35 minutes and then 10 minutes is given, but we'll try and work that out. But I'm just trying to think of a similar accident we've had this year where a car's gone off. We're going to do an update into 5 Live in a couple of moments while I try and think about that. But because just for those of you listening on the radio, if you can't quite picture it, I'm going to try and think of something, you know, vaguely similar. Well, we're still under red flag conditions after a huge accident for Romain Grosjean, the scariest accident that I've seen in Formula One probably since the 70s and the 80s. Romain Grosjean went off the circuit and hit the metal barrier so hard and at such an angle that the car went through the metal barrier while splitting in half. So the back half of Grosjean's car went away. The front half, with Grosjean in it, got lodged in the metal barrier after hitting it at about 140 miles an hour, subsequently burst into flames. And Grosjean was really, really miraculously able to jump out and is relatively unscathed. A few burns to his ankle and to his hands, but a really nasty accident. There's now going to be a very lengthy delay while they have to repair the barriers, and then hopefully they will get the race underway. So yeah, really miraculous to see Romain Grosjean walking away. Red flag conditions. Hamilton, for what it's worth, still leading the Grand Prix.
So if you're just joining us, you must have just heard Jack there giving an update. So the race started. Romain Grosjean had a massive crash. Car basically sheared into two, burst into flames. Luckily, Romain Grosjean was able to climb out with the help of the medical delegate as well, getting to the scene. So we will wait, and the red flag is obviously we are under those situations right now, and the Haas team, actually a couple of the members of the Haas team just arriving on the scene of the incident to try and have a look at what happened. Michael Massey, race director, sort of picking them up and helping them along to the area where the impact happened. One of them has a big set of rubber gloves that he's just putting on as well. Jack Nicholls, back to you.
Well, we are still, as I say, under those red flag conditions. And go on.
You know what I think is scary about this one is, and what will be going through everyone else's mind, is that this is not a freak accident. This is an innocuous crash. Fatalities happen in motorsport, and so often they're labelled as freak accidents, and very often they are freak accidents. This is just a car hitting a wall at high speed, but cars in Formula One do hit walls at high speed, and this one could have been a fatal accident. I think, looking at the pictures.
Without the halo, I think it's no chance.
Seeing another replay of the car ablaze, knowing that Romain Grosjean is sitting in the middle of a fireball at the point where he's just had a huge impact as well. It's a miracle that he is out and okay. It's an absolute miracle. And the problem is, the drivers will know that it can happen again. A driver can crash into a barrier at that speed, at that angle. It can happen. It's not like it's a 1 in a 10, 20 years sort of thing. Cars hit barriers regularly. You hope not to, but it happens, and you don't want to end up with your car in half, sitting in the barrier in a fireball.
Have you, Palmer? I'm just thinking about your accident in Monaco. Okay, it was in the wet and behind safety car, but in the, off the zebra crossing. I don't need to remind you probably, but
yeah, it wasn't behind the safety car.
No, okay, safety car restart. My apologies. But that kind of felt like a similar-ish angle, maybe not as much speed, maybe a bit less angle.
But that one, similar speed probably, maybe Russell's in about 6th gear, looking for an upshift to 7th on the exit of turn 3 when he comes to the crash point. It's very early on the straight from turn 3 up to turn 4. It's really on the exit of turn 3. The speed is not immense when Grosjean. It looks immense because the barrier is very close, but in relative terms of what the speeds are like at the end of the main straight on full flow with DRS open, an impact speed that a car should be designed to keep a driver safe for would be way higher than that. That's the worry. My crash in Monaco is not a bad example of probably a relatively similar speed. My one was probably a lower speed, to be honest. But the car was intact. The second part was the scary bit for me. But yeah, it's an accident that can happen again.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I totally agree. It's not a freak accident, is it? As you say, it's a collision between cars, and one hits the barriers. That kind of happens all the time. But there we go. We'll obviously keep you up to date with what's going on, which at the moment is just the repairing of the barrier. Jenny?
Yes, just spoken to the team again. So Romain Grosjean, latest update, he's going to hospital. He has a suspected broken rib or ribs, but that's to be confirmed, obviously, when they get to hospital, and we'll get more updates as and when they know more.
Andrew Benson, BBC's chief F1 writer, actually, we're just getting a replay of Lewis Hamilton watching the replay in the Renault garage, and just a little shake of the head for Hamilton, and that's about it. Andrew, your sort of thoughts, as it were?
Well, I think there's two overarching aspects of this, aren't there? The first is this is a testament to the safety work that Formula One's done over the last few years, last decades. An accident like that, a driver, a car's gone through a barrier, and the driver has managed to get out relatively, I don't want to say unscathed, because he might have a broken rib and some burns, obviously, but the halo, it would appear, has probably saved his life. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, everybody in Formula One will be looking at that barrier and thinking, how on earth has that happened? Because it was a relatively glancing blow that he did it. It wasn't like the car went in absolutely nose first, and there's absolutely no way the barrier should be splitting like that. There was back in the 70s, a couple of drivers were killed at Watkins Glen in the US because of barriers separating and the car going between them. And the cars are obviously much stronger now, but and thank goodness they are. But there's going to have to be a serious inquiry as to how that's happened.
Yeah, especially at a modern Formula One facility as well. I think
it doesn't matter whether it's modern or not. They're all equipped to the same standard. The barriers should all be able to withstand something like that. Obviously, they have to have impact absorption, but the issue is that he's sort of pierced the barrier. I mean, I'm still trying to get my head around how the car has ended up at the angle that it's at, because he's gone in at one angle. It's almost like the car has turned 180 degrees in the barrier and twisted at the same time. And somehow he's been able to get out, and also the rescue crew from the medical car were very brave in going to help him out of the car. Grosjean got out himself, but there was a big fire going on. Obviously, there's a lot of fuel in that car, and they went straight in there to help him climb out. And he's obviously very shaken as he does so. I have to hope his injuries aren't worse than they appear to be at first glance. But we're just watching them now with the forklift trucks taking that barrier apart. I don't know how they're going to rebuild that, because they've got to embed the new barrier into the ground. This could take really quite some time.
It seems to me plausible that the race doesn't restart.
Yeah,
because they've got to put another barrier in where that barrier has now been completely demolished. The the few links of the Armco has now completely come down. They've got to reinstall another barrier, but the new barrier that goes in is going to be going in to replace a barrier that's not worked, that's done a very dangerous job. It's testament to the strength of the cars that Grosjean's okay, but I've seen accidents bigger than that where the drivers have walked away for years. Robert Kubica had a huge impact in Montreal in 2007, and it's a little bit like that, although that maybe was even at a higher speed.
Yeah, I would have said so, but
it's probably the angle he hit is a little bit similar to that. The Kubica crash was scary, it looked terrifying, and actually Kubica ended up missing the next race with minor injuries, maybe the same as Grosjean, but we'll know in due course about that. But the barrier's just not worked, and if they replace the barrier, what confidence does anyone have that that accident won't happen again?
It's certainly a worrying situation for all involved with Formula One at the moment, with Romain Grosjean, as we say, on the way to hospital. That's the big news and the best news. But as we've said before, Jenny.
Yeah, I'm just getting an update actually from the FIA about Alan van der Merwe and Dr. Ian Roberts, who were the people first on the scene, just to check they're okay, and the FIA have assured me that they are both okay. So that's definitely good news on that front.
Just trying to think of some similar incidents. I'm almost thinking of Marcus Ericsson when he got on the brakes at Monza going down into turn one, and he's hit that at a sort of similar angle. But yeah, difficult moments for Formula One at the moment. There's no doubt about that. And as I say, there will be a minimum of a 45-minute delay. That was at past, so that was only sort of 13 minutes ago. So we've still got another half hour at least. But as we say, we have to sort of consider the possibility this race may not restart for an awful long time, to be honest with you. All the cars in the pit lane at the moment. But let's hear from the team principal of the Haas team, Gunther Steiner, shall we, after that accident for Grosjean.
Gunther, big crash for Romain. How's he doing?
He's gone to the hospital now for the checkups and x-rays and things like this, but he has got minor burns, but he's conscious. He's on his way to the hospital, and I don't know more of it. I didn't speak with him direct. It's more important to get him to the hospital, but he's okay. If there's anything else, they just will find out in the hospital, but he's all right.
When you first saw it, can you just talk us through what went through your head and what happened in those moments afterwards?
I mean, when you see something like this, I don't think there's a lot. It's just like, I hope we get lucky. You know, that's the only thing. What you think in this moment, you just think. You don't think how it happened or what. It's just like, where is Romain? And then one of the guys saw him on TV just jumping out, because I was still worried he's in. And I would like to thank Dr. Ian Roberts and Alan van der Merwe from the FIA and all the marshals around there, which I don't know by name, but they did a fantastic job to get him away as quick as possible from the fire. I mean, it was amazing what they did, and thank you a lot to them.
Great stuff. Thanks for your time, Gunther.
That was Gunther Steiner talking to Lawrence Barretto in the paddock in Bahrain. We've all seen sort of a lot of accidents in our time, in our various formulas that we've been covering, and so many fatal accidents or bad accidents look fairly innocuous, but this was almost the other way around. It looked so scary and so spectacular, and they're now clearing all of this barrier away. I mean, we're in for the long haul. But what I would say is that it is 10 to 6 local time in Bahrain. The Grand Prix next weekend is due to get underway 7 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night. I can't quite remember off the top of my head, but much later. We're not racing against the sunset because it is a night race. So in theory, we can hang out for as long as we need before the barrier gets repaired. But even then, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, and that you feel you'd like to be answered before the race gets underway again. Jenny.
Yeah, so Lewis Hamilton, we saw him looking kind of out into the distance in the pit lane just by the pit exit, and he's actually now tweeted on social media saying, "I'm so grateful Romain is safe. Wow, the risk we take is no joke. For those of you out there that forget that we put our life on the line for this sport and for what we love to do, thankful to the FIA for the massive strides we've taken for Romain to walk away from that safely." And I have to say, it was only on Friday evening that the drivers got together for their usual briefing, and it was Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel who came together to basically say their displeasure with Michael Massey, the race director at that time, for incidents that happened in Turkey where the cars were released when there was a yellow flag still waving, a crane still on track, and they were adamant that this could not happen again. And Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel, the elder statesman of Formula One, I suppose, and it'll be people like that right now, Jolyon Palmer, who the paddock will look towards, and you know, if there needs to be questions raised, surely the drivers will have to do that together, or will they just rely on what's happening around them?
No, I think the drivers will probably get together right now. I mean, there's going to be a lengthy delay, and they're going to want assurances that this sort of thing won't happen again. How they're going to be given those assurances, I don't know. But it's a really tough time for the other 19 drivers who have still got to go out there and race. They've got to just... at the end of the day, if they have to race, then they've got to have assurances that the reinstalled barrier is safe.
Well, it looks like they're replacing it currently with concrete barriers. It looks like they're putting those big concrete blocks into position, linking them together, and then presumably some Tech Pro or something to go in front would be my prediction. But in which case, the delay wouldn't be a huge amount of time, to be perfectly honest with you, because they're kind of nearly done with it already.
Yeah, indeed. And that barrier, I've never seen a car hit that barrier before.
Yeah.
So that particular barrier, you know...
By that point, that is a bit freak to hit the barrier.
To hit the same barrier again is a bit freak. But the rest of the circuit is lined with Armco as well. So my point is more about the safety of the rest of the barriers. Because, as we've said, people have had bigger impacts, bigger accidents, and not had that disastrous-looking consequence of Grosjean's crash just then. And you would not want to be seeing someone else have anything even slightly like that again. So the drivers are going to want to know that this is all safe. Looks like they are putting concrete blocks in to replace that Armco barrier that was destroyed. And maybe we're not going to be too long before we do get going.
So, red flag still out, of course, and you wonder whether they'll restart the race behind the safety car and just do a safety car restart rather than risk the sort of squabbling of positions coming out of turn 3.
But why would you do that? Because you're afraid of having another crash in the same place. But then don't restart the race.
Don't disagree, but I'm just saying I wonder.
If they're having to make compromises to race procedure because they don't want a car hitting that barrier, then to me the race is not okay to restart in the condition that it is. We either race normally or we find another solution.
Yeah. Jenny.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about Romain Grosjean. He's obviously got a young family at home, his wife as well at home watching on, and this must be very difficult for them, as it is difficult for many people up and down the pit lane when families are away for so long. And the F1, show has continued remarkably this year to try and get 17 races on. This is the first of a triple header, and you have to feel for him, his family and friends, and just think, if you're Romain Grosjean, and your career in Formula One is ending at the end of this season, you couldn't blame him if he just walked away after this race. You really could not.
Well, but that's a very interesting driver psychology question, then, isn't it? Because does that mean he never does a motor race again? Because that wouldn't be dissimilar to Sir Jackie Stewart in 1973 when Francois Sever died, and then Stewart didn't do the final race. Jolyon?
Might make him think twice about doing IndyCar. as an option for next year. He may well be missing next week's race, depending on what we find out about his injuries. I guess there's a chance he won't race next week, in which case he's only got one more Formula One race left in Abu Dhabi in 2 weeks' time, which you never know, maybe medically he won't be doing that one either. I think if you're a driver, you'd want... He's been in Formula One a long time, and he'd want to be having a final race, I think, rather than go out as he has done now. But also, I've never been in that position of having a real life-threatening accident right in my final Formula One races. And I agree. I mean, the family pressure as well. He's got young kids. Is he going to want to... Might this be that reality check for him?
So, under red flag conditions, again, a 10-minute warning will be given at the restart. Where it came from, Grosjean basically cutting across very dramatically to the right-hand side, across the front of Daniel Kvyat, in a not unusual maneuver for Romain Grosjean. In no way am I putting any blame on him for the accident that he's had, but it was that sort of dramatic swing across the circuit.
Yeah, so there was a Ferrari touched with Lance Stroll, who was sent out wide right on turn 2. Then they came on, but were slightly slow on the way out of turn 3, and Grosjean then did swing across the track to try and make progress from the cars that were slightly slower ahead, and ran into Kvyat. To be honest, I do blame Grosjean for the incident. If you take just the accident,
yeah, totally agree.
Grosjean's moved across the width of the track with disregard for a guy that was alongside him. It is his fault. Nonetheless, you know, that level of impact is obviously crazy, and you don't want to see that at all. But he's caused the accident himself by moving from the left across to the right when Daniel Kvyat's held his line and is alongside him.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, Romain Grosjean on the opening lap of the Grand Prix moved across at turn 3 to try and get ahead of Daniel Kvyat. The two collided, and Grosjean was sent spearing into the metal Armco barrier on the right-hand side of the circuit. And when he hit that barrier, he basically went through it. The car split in two behind him. He, in the front half of the car, the sort of cockpit area of the car, got lodged in the metal barrier after he hit it at about 140 miles an hour. The car then burst into flames. Grosjean was able to jump out of the car, and he's amazingly, Jolyon, unscathed from that.
Incredibly. I mean, a terrifying looking accident where, yeah, he's come across Daniel Kvyat. They're trying to gain momentum on the drivers ahead when Grosjean's chopped across the nose of Kvyat on his inside. That's just pitched him into a high-speed accident with the approaching Armco. And the barrier's not very far away from the track at the moment that Grosjean hits. It's actually closing in to the track, and it's coming in at an angle, which gives Grosjean more of an angle than just a glancing blow. And the rest of it I've never seen before. How the front of the car punches straight through the Armco. The rear falls away completely. The car is split in two. Grosjean is left in the Armco. You have to say the halo may well have saved his life at this point. And then there's just flames everywhere in the cockpit where Grosjean is in his survival cell. How he's walked away from it is just quite incredible. It's testament to the strength of Formula One cars, and just a crazy accident.
It's the sort of accident that we haven't seen since the sort of early 1970s, when drivers like Sir Jackie Stewart wanted to put up barriers around the circuit so that they wouldn't hit trees. They put these barriers in, and in the early days they were quite sort of flimsy, and you had this kind of accident on occasion, but not in the last at least 20 years have we seen an accident like this in Formula One. But Romain Grosjean is okay. They're repairing the barriers at the moment, so the race may restart a little bit later on, but we'll keep you up to date when and if that happens.
I wonder if Kvyat was in the blind spot for Grosjean, because Kvyat was quite a long way to the right. Grosjean was quite a long way to the left. Kvyat wasn't sitting right behind him, next to him.
Grosjean went past him, didn't he? from what maybe I'm wrong. I thought Grosjean came from behind Kvyat and was passing him. That's what surprised me the most about Grosjean's movement, was that to me he appeared to be behind Kvyat, pass him on the sort of right, and then move over when the cars started slowing down in front of him.
Possibly. I know that the visibility in the back of the Formula 1 cars is not great, and if Kvyat was quite a distance across the width of the track to the right, there's a chance that Grosjean wouldn't have known he was there because of the exact angle that he was coming. It's not when someone's coming up behind you, you see them when they're sort of behind or just pulling out, but when they're right out wide, you can't see them. And we saw an incident where Perez hit Raikkonen coming out of the pit lane in Mugello, and occasionally you see accidents where across the width of the track you don't have the mirrors that can show you that part. And I wonder if Kvyat has just been, when Grosjean looked in the mirror, in a blind spot, then Grosjean's moved across, and then at some point he should see him, but he's probably not checked the mirror again as he's coming across, thinking he's clear from his first check, and then they've had their touch. So we are still obviously behind red flag conditions. Some of you are asking why you're still hearing car sounds. Well, that's just some replays that Formula One have been playing out while we're having the conversation. The car's very much not leaving the circuit just yet. We're only 25 minutes into the minimum delay time of 45. But to be perfectly honest with you, looking at the barrier that they have erected now, that seems like it's almost ready to go, to be perfectly honest. Hopefully they're going to put some tyres or some Tech Pro in front of it, but having said that, I think the Grosjean would have probably taken the concrete over the barrier, over the Armco barriers on that particular situation. Ross Brawn and Andrew Shovlin, the engineer for Mercedes and the boss of Formula One, just walking down the pit lane having a conversation. But obviously it's a strange time, isn't it? And the more time, I presume, that you're sort of standing around, maybe the more you think about it or the more you forget about it. I guess it's different for different drivers. Yeah, it's difficult to forget about it when it's the reason that you're standing around, really. You prepare for a race in the same way pretty much every time. Your day is so routinely planned as a driver on Sunday. And then you have the start of the race. You have to go to the grid, the warm-up lap, the start. And then the start effectively kind of hasn't happened because the race was red flagged within 3 or 4 corners. So we're going to have a new start. I don't know how they're going to take the grid yet, if they're going to take how it was when the red flag came out.
You'd think it would be a full restart, wouldn't you?
Yeah, because they've not completed a lap, so there's no count back.
Yeah.
So that would then be a full restart, which would be a huge reprieve for Bottas, who's lost a lot of places at the start there, and would be on the dirty side of the grid again in 6th if he was to start there. I mean, they've got an order, but it may well be a full restart because they've not completed a racing lap.
Yeah, it depends where they can take the order from. And Grosjean, the rear of Grosjean's car, some of you saying that it was split in 2, and it was, but the sort of survival cell remained intact. That is kind of it's not obviously designed to split in 2, let's say, but it did sort of split in 2 at the right place, if that makes sense. Romain Grosjean's Haas car just being lowered down onto the back of a flatbed truck now, with the front half as well, and about to be taken away. And the wheels will be taken with it, obviously, that are just lying strewn at the side of the circuit at the moment. But the barriers looking like they are pretty much in position. And as you say, it could be a big reprieve for Valtteri Bottas after that very difficult start that saw him drop down into 6th position. Verstappen was looking in a decent place, to be perfectly honest with you, because Albon had lost out to Perez, though. Then that could have been quite crucial.
Yeah, but was ahead of Bottas. I think Verstappen was in a good position, up in 2nd, with only Hamilton to worry about, with Bottas down in that midfield as he was in Monza. He never made progress there. I think Verstappen would be happy with that. He'd hate to have that Mercedes go back in front of him for a full restart.
So everybody in the pit lane still, and we're also in that strange situation where there's not much to be done, is there? When you get when was it Monza, we had the red flag sort of halfway through the race and people were changing tyres and they were trying to fix bits on the car, and but obviously no real need here. Lando Norris had a bit of a wobbly front wing, but that was sort of about the extent of the damage. No one, I wonder, well, what do you think people will do with tyres in this situation? And again, I guess it depends if it's going to be a full restart or not. A lot of questions that will unfold, and certainly not being the incidentless Grand Prix that we thought maybe it would be when we came in this morning to commentate on this one. And of course, if Grosjean is out for the next race, Haas would have a decision to make about drivers, one that they need to make for next year overall anyway. But with both Nikita Mazepin and Mick Schumacher would be racing in the Formula 2 championship, but we'll wait and find out what's going to happen there, because obviously Grosjean has been taken to hospital already, and as soon as there is an update we will of course give it to you here, or it will be on the BBC Sport website. Now, starting that Grand Prix, as ever, the medical car starts behind, so if there is a big first lap accident, then the medical car is there on scene straight away, and that's what happened earlier on with Alan van der Merwe.
Okay. Alan, very dramatic scenes with Roman's huge crash there. Can you describe what you found when you first got to the scene?
Big surprise for us as well. We've never seen that much fire. I mean, in 12 years, I've not seen that much fire at an impact like that. So we just took a little while to process what's going on. I'm sure it was only a second or so, but it felt like ages. And then Romain just actually started to get out of the car himself, which is pretty amazing after an accident like that.
You must have felt a huge sense of relief when you saw that happen.
Yeah, not yet. Some relief when we got back here and he was okay. It was very impressive. It just goes to show all the systems that we've developed. Everything worked hand in hand. The halo, the barriers, the seat belts, everything worked how it should. And without just one of those things, it could have been a very different outcome.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Yeah, it's true. The flame was so big, the fire was still burning as well when you look at the replay.
That can't be everything working as it should.
No, I agree with that.
That's not how a Formula 1 car's what's supposed to happen if a Formula 1 car hits a wall, surely.
He's okay.
And then we're just after that interview.
Can I just go and say thank you?
I don't know where he is. He might be in his office in the back. Kannst du ihn suchen? Gerne.
Thank you very much, guys.
No,
honestly, you know, I mean, I was surprised how you fucking reacted.
Oh, yeah.
I was nice.
That's what we're here for.
Sorry, obviously Gunther Steiner was going to swear. Should have seen that one coming. But I thought maybe because it was a replay, Formula 1 might have not had him swear. But there we go. He was asking if he could go and see Romain, and as we heard from him earlier on, Jenny.
Yeah, it seems so weird after a big incident like that to be asking the teams what they're working on, what they're up to. George Russell has taken to social media saying massive relief to see Romain is okay. Huge credit to all the teams, the FIA and F1 for all the safety measures we have in the sport today. So that's George Russell on social media. And when it comes to the cars there, I mean, the teams still have to focus on the race ahead of them, and they're doing that at the moment. So it looks like Lando Norris obviously had that damage to the front wing, so the team will be able to have a look at that. Ferrari, the engine covers were off, and they were actually, I think, looking to try and change some of the engine covers as well. So there are things that you can work on with the car, things that you can change slightly to try and make the most of it. And as you've already alluded to, it'll be interesting to see what they do with tyres as well. So there are a lot of question marks when you look back at the race, but it's so hard to pull your mind back. Jolene, just tell me, as a sports person, former sports person now, I suppose, Are you more attuned to being able to put aside what's happening elsewhere? I mean, I'm rubbish at it. I still feel a bit shaky after watching the impact of that crash and watching it again. But you've trained in karts, you've trained in the lower formula all the way up. So as a driver, does your brain work slightly differently to us mere mortals?
When you put the helmet on, the grid disappears and you're back going in your Formula One car. You're focused on the job, and that's what they're all going to have to do now. When the visor's down, they're going to be focused on the race start, back to what they need to be doing for performance and for giving their best start of the race, and even thinking about the rest of the race as well, back to even what we were talking about at the start of the show, the strategy, the tyre wear, all this stuff. They can't afford to be thinking about the barriers, Grosjean's huge accident and all this, or they'll just go backwards. So it's amazing how it's a thing that racing drivers can do. Tragedies happen from time to time, huge accidents happen from time to time, but the show goes on so often. And drivers, when you're in the cockpit, to be honest, there's an element of thinking it's not going to happen to you, and there's an element of thinking, right, blank that out, I've got a job to do. And they've done so many races. Bahrain Grand Prix has been on the calendar for 15 years. It's you just got to focus on everything else and work on the performance. I don't think they'll be thinking about that when they're back in the car. When you're not in the car and you're seeing the replays and everything else, it's a bit different and it's a bit unsettling.
Andrew Benson.
Yeah, so you were musing, Jack, about how the order might be at the start. I think we don't know that, but there's no rule that says that they have to do a complete restart of the race, even though they've only done half a racing lap. There is an official order on the timing screens which say lap 2, with Hamilton leading Verstappen from Perez, Albon, Ricciardo and Bottas and so on. And the regulations say that in all cases the order will be taken at the last point at which it was possible to determine the position of all cars. All such cars will then be permitted to resume the race. So on the face of it, it would appear, I mean, Michael Massey could order a full restart, but that, I think, in the modern age, that's an unusual step to take, although this is a relatively unprecedented situation. So, but on the face of it, it would appear as if this is the order, and the procedure then is the cars follow the safety car out of the pits, and then Michael Massey will decide whether it's a standing start or a rolling start.
Yeah, absolutely. We had this in Formula E last year or the year before. I think you texted me about the crash, Andrew, because it wasn't a particularly good one from a Formula E point of view. It was one of the classic road blocker ones in Bern. And the difficulty there was some drivers, basically there was a melee at the first chicane. Some drivers cut the chicane to get past it, so there was an order at the end of the first sector, but not all cars had made it to the end of the first sector. Whereas I would agree with you that it would seem that the majority of the cars, when the red flag came out, had a order to them. So I wouldn't be surprised if, as you say, you go out behind the safety car and then carry on from where you left off, would be the thing you would imagine would happen.
And conveniently, they've all parked up in the pit lane in that order.
Exactly,
well.
So you haven't got to shuffle anyone around.
Yeah, if you start getting people back to the front of the grid or switch them round, they are in the order that they were in when the red flag came out. You're not allowed to overtake after the red flag, so they've come back through the pits. It seems a sensible way to go.
Yes, and there was an onboard from Sebastian Vettel's car that they showed at one point where it was very clear that they all stopped racing when they saw the red flag, and that was after turn 4, and that's after the first sector. So there is a definite racing order.
Yeah, because
it doesn't necessarily mean they'll apply it, but there is an order.
Yeah, indeed. So a 10-minute warning still will be given. I don't know. I'm not loving the stick 5 concrete blocks down in that place and off we go, which looks like the situation at the moment. But maybe that's, it will be done to sort of FIA safety specifications. It'll be the same concrete blocks that are at the side of the track in a Baku or in another sort of temporary street circuit like that. But there's something a little bit, I don't know, just doesn't quite sit right with me, but I don't know why. Maybe it's just the situation that makes it feel a little bit odd. Session still suspended, still a 10-minute warning. Still, we are about 3 or 4 minutes away from the end of that minimum 45-minute delay. But you would think that we won't be too far away from going racing again. Looking at the the state that the circuit is in. And if we do get going again in this order, then we're in for an interesting Grand Prix, you have to say, with Verstappen in second place. Maybe Hamilton has the pace to just drive away, which is how it looked in qualifying, but Red Bull often a little bit closer to Mercedes come the race.
Well, the Albon effect becomes a bit of a non-event in some ways. The Red Bull won't be desperate for Albon to be there to try and level it between Verstappen and the Mercedes, because there's only one Mercedes at the front. So it will just be a head-to-head between Verstappen and Hamilton if they start in the order that they completed the lap under red flag. I think it's great news for Red Bull. I think it's Verstappen now starting on the dirty side of the grid, where Bottas got an awful start from. Albon starting fourth as well. The two Red Bulls both starting second and fourth, as they were in Turkey, where they went backwards very quickly. But if Verstappen can get a solid start, even staying second with Hamilton in the lead, we've got a direct head-to-head race. You'd still back Hamilton, but it's better to have one Mercedes in front than two.
Yes, exactly. And you've still got that issue of track position and things like that if it is going to be a multi-stop Grand Prix, with the top 9 all on the medium tyres. Leclerc in 10th is the odd one, starting on the hard compound of tyre. Ross Brawn still having a chat with the Mercedes team over on the pit wall, seeing if we can listen into them, but the little camera's a little bit too far away to hear anything that the guys are saying to each other there.
Former colleagues.
Yeah, indeed. When Ross Brawn took over running that Mercedes team, well, the Mercedes team took over Brawn, didn't it? And Ross Brawn was in charge for a while. Again, a 10-minute warning will be given prior to the restart of the Grand Prix. And it looked, last time we saw the sort of accident site, as though it was getting cleared away, and they were sort of the cleaning trucks and all of that were disappearing back around. So hopefully we will be getting this race restarted before too long. Sebastian Vettel standing in front of his Ferrari with his helmet perched just on the top of his head. Was that a look you ever pulled, Palmer? Just walked around with your helmet on top of your head but not fully on?
Only if I was putting the helmet on and someone just asked me a question at that exact moment. I had to delay the helmet putting on process for 30 seconds. I'd leave it perched, but I wouldn't just leave it perched for the 45-minute wait or even a 10-minute wait.
Jenny?
Yeah, he's actually going to auction that helmet off after this race. It's his kind of a helmet designed to appreciate the We Racers One mentality behind this season. It's got lovely sort of stripes of all the different colours down the middle, and then people of all different races, creeds, colours, sexes, you name it, all around the base of the helmet. It's a really, really nice touch, and he never auctions off his stuff. He never gives rid of his helmets, but this one he's going to try and auction off for charity, which I thought was a nice touch. Now, I have spoken to some of the teams about the restart. They don't have any more information, it seems, than we do. They're saying they think it'll be a standing start, but they don't know as yet. They've not been given any more details than you and I have. And on Valtteri Bottas and the Mercedes, he had a really poor start, and I was asking the team what had happened, but I did that just as the car of Romain Grosjean speared into the catch fencing and the fence, so that wasn't the best time to ask that question. They have now got back to me though and said he just had a ton of wheel spin. There's not a lot of grip in P2 on the grid. And Jolene, can it be as variable as that? Some grid spots are better rubbered in than others, or is it just odds and even side?
Normally it's an odds and even side, to be honest. I don't see why second on the grid would be much worse than fourth or sixth or anywhere that's not on the racing line. The racing line, every lap the drivers come through, for all their practice, is on the outside. They're driving over all the odd grid spots, first, third, fifth, all the way down to 19th. They are then naturally a little bit more rubbered in than the even grid spots, which is where Verstappen and Albon now lie in second and fourth, and that's where Bottas started from in second. There has been some support series. Formula 2 have had races, and that will help to put rubber down on both sides of the grid, but it's not surprising that the inside might be slightly less grippy than the outside. Sebastian Vettel took the lead from second on the grid last year in Bahrain, so it shouldn't be much different from that. It can be done, and also Bottas was passed by Albon, started fourth, and Ricciardo started sixth, both on the bad side of the grid as well, the dirtier side. So I don't think it can just be that second place is particularly bad.
Sam sent an email citing Kimi Raikkonen's crash at Silverstone in 2014 as a similar example of a sort of impact with an Armco barrier. That barrier had to be repaired and replaced because it did sort of open up a little bit and it needed repairing. But I think that's about as a pretty decent comparison, actually, to the kind of accident that Grosjean had here. I'm sure if you haven't seen it and you're listening on the radio, then you will have done by now, because it's all over the social media and the regular TV. But not dissimilar to the Raikkonen accident at Silverstone in terms of sort of angle and impact and barrier and that sort of thing.
I'd go with that. And there was a delay for barrier repair. The difference, of course, that Raikkonen didn't get stuck in the barriers, and the car break in half. It's often you have barrier repair where obviously the barriers had a big impact and it's not quite in the perfect way it needs to be to be the recipient of another big impact. But I've never seen a car go straight through an Armco barrier in that way, and that's the difference. I think there will be a huge investigation, I'm sure, with the FIA as to how that happened.
Yeah, because he was on the ground as well. That's the other thing, is that he sort of hit it at the exact levels that you would expect him to hit it at, quite frankly. Still then waiting for any word on the session restart. A 10-minute warning will be given prior to the race resumption. We have now had the 45 minutes of potential delay. As I said, last time we saw the crash site, in inverted commas, it looked like it was sort of getting cleared up and ready to go, but something is still obviously going on down there at the moment. Drivers just sitting by their cars. Charles Leclerc sitting by himself with a little handheld fan blowing some cool air on him. The grid for the resumption will be published on the document system. So that suggests that it will be not a full restart of the race, and that it will be the order that they are currently in.
Suggests that everyone in the teams don't know the order that they're going to be restarting in until it's published on the document system.
Yeah.
There's two options. You either do a full restart or you restart in the order they're in now.
Yeah.
And we'll find out in due course.
Indeed. But you'd have thought if it was a full restart, they would have said it was a full restart, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Or is it just a teaser? Just go and check it out on.
Yeah, exactly. They're just trying to drive traffic on their on the FIA website.
The document system page is going to be flooded.
Yeah, they want more sponsors and stuff, like Black Friday. Jenny.
Yes, just talking about the FIA, it's slightly appropriate, I think, and that's why I'm just sort of raising it, that this weekend is the weekend that the FIA are honouring marshals, officials and medical staff. The session will restart at 18:35 local time, so we've got about 12 minutes. There we go. Marshals, officials and medical staff being honoured across the world by the FIA this weekend in motorsport, and lots of people who, like Alan McNish, one of them, but lots of people involved with motorsport have taken to social media to pay their thanks to those people, and I suppose it's apt that we're looking at the marshals, the officials and the medical staff today to thank them for their help in what was a horrible accident, and one that they all stepped up at in a time when they needed to. The guys who were down on the ground immediately with fire extinguishers trying to help, the medical delegates, the driver of the medical car as well, everybody stepped up at that moment, and I think it's appropriate to just recognise that, without volunteers and without all those officials and marshals and medical staff, we can't go racing. So it's testament to them, and we thank them every weekend we go racing.
Andrew's been on the document system.
Yep, I've got the restart grid, and it's not quite the current order. It's Hamilton from Verstappen, Perez, Bottas 4th, not 6th, Albon, Ricciardo, Norris, Ocon, Gasly, Vettel, Stroll, Leclerc, Sainz, Giovinazzi, Kvyat, Raikkonen, Magnussen, Russell, Latifi.
Right. Well, where on earth have they taken that from then? I
don't know.
Maybe they took it from the... Well, Bottas was 6th by the first corner, wasn't he? So unless they took it at the last... Okay, well, what, Russell and Latifi at the... They must have taken it at the last mini sector before Grosjean's accident or something. That's a very, very interesting one indeed, isn't it? Well, we'll see as we get ready to go ahead of the Bahrain Grand Prix in a couple of moments' time. And it will be in 9.5 minutes that we get this race underway. So Bottas will start 4th on the grid then. Hamilton will start on pole position. We'll try and get to the bottom of where exactly that grid order came from. Maybe if we've seen another replay, it would make a bit more sense. But I can only imagine it's like the mini sector halfway around the lap or something like that.
Bottas starts 4th.
Yeah, we'll get into this in a minute, Jolien, because let's hear from Carlos Sainz.
Carlos, it's never ideal when there's such a lengthy delay during a race, but obviously seeing one of your fellow drivers in such a big crash, how does it affect you?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, especially at the beginning, just seeing the flames of the car and not knowing what happened. It was a tough moment, but then obviously as soon as I saw him jump out of the car, it was really, really good news. I couldn't be more relieved. We were all, the whole paddock, as you could see. And yeah, happy to see him jump out, and just shows that every time we jump in one of these things, we are putting our life at risk, and it's good.
Thank you.
So yeah, Jolien, Bottas will be starting in 4th place. That was Carlos Sainz talking to Amy Overy down in the on the pit lane. But I can only imagine that they've taken it from the last mini sector that everybody had gone through before the red flag came out.
No.
No? Well,
No.
Andrew knows the answer, so let's not argue.
It's the safety car line.
It is exactly that.
There we go.
Jolien is right. It's the safety car line, yes.
Where is the safety car line then?
End of pit exit.
So we just restart the race. You're taking the...
Well, Bottas went from 2nd to 6th in one corner. So he had one straight and a braking zone to get from 2nd to 6th.
So they've counted 60 metres of the race, basically.
Yeah, they've counted the first 60 metres, and that has cost Bottas 2 places on the grid. I guess that is the line that they can measure where everyone was.
Why bother?
Well, because why not?
Well, yeah, I suppose. We just restart the race.
But it's surprising they can't see that they are in an order now anyway, and go with the order that everyone got to the end of Sector 1 in.
Anyway, that is what it is. So they will have to reshuffle the order in the pit lane, or when they just come out onto the track behind the safety car. You would assume that it's going to be a standing start again. There's no real reason for it not to be. So maybe Bottas starting 4th will end up 10th by the time we get to turn 1 on the second time around. But the driver's now getting suited and booted. Balaclava going on for Sergio Perez, who, let me look, 3rd on the grid then will be Sergio Perez, with Bottas 4th and Albon 5th, Ricciardo in 6th position.
So basically what it does, it keeps Verstappen on the front row alongside Hamilton, and it keeps a car between he and Perez, between he and Bottas, which is Perez, who will start Perez 3rd, Bottas 4th. So Bottas then, if he can pass Perez, is right back in the fight. So that's worked out well for Bottas somehow as a compromise. We thought it was a choice of 2nd or 6th. They've gone straight down the middle and given him a deal or no deal. He'll take 4th. And that as a compromise is not too bad, because either way he was going to be on the dirty side of the grid. and he's just cleared nicely Ricciardo and Albon. Albon now starts 5th on the clean side of the grid. That gives him a nice chance to get back ahead of Bottas in theory, and go with the front two, Hamilton and Verstappen.
Chris wants to know, what is the safety car line at the start of the lap for?
It's for when there's a safety car. There's 2 safety car lines, and they're the moments you race up to. So when people come into the pits, you can basically push in the pit lane, and then you accelerate out, and it's whoever gets to the safety car line ahead, then it basically establishes an order. It's exactly what it does under safety car. So when there's a safety car and 5 drivers pit, the way that they know who's ahead is who gets to that line first, rather than randomly know it when someone's in the pits and someone's not. They have a line across the track.
So we're just getting a look at the replay here, and I mean, Bottas was ahead.
It's a dead heat.
Yeah, Bottas was ahead of Ricciardo and Albon. And actually, when you look at that, I don't know how Bottas ended up behind Ricciardo and Albon almost, because he was ahead of the 2 of them by a fraction, admittedly, and one's gone up the inside, one's gone round the outside.
Albon lunged him at turn 1. Albon was really aggressive with Bottas, and that meant that Bottas had just be a bit cautious with the Red Bull smoking it in on the inside. And Ricciardo's always aggressive at the start, and he pinched in on the outside, and he was really close to crashing with both. In the end, crashed with neither.
I just can't believe we're getting another replay of the Grosjean crash, how much and how long it's burning for. I think that's what I find so startling.
A driver's fireproof overalls.
Yeah.
I mean, what wonders they are.
Yeah.
For Romain Grosjean to be sitting in that car as it's ablaze for seconds, and he has maybe some minor burns, but visibly he looked okay as he jumped out of the car. Absolutely incredible.
I'm trying to think of the last, Gerhard Berger at Tamburello in the 1980s, the car was ablaze. Before that, you think of the horrible tragic accidents of Roger Williamson and Riccardo Paletti in the early 80s. Yeah, Niki Lauda in 76. But
I think that I've never seen I've not seen some of those ones you mentioned, but I've seen the Lauda one, and I think almost the blaze that Grosjean's sitting in is fiercer. It looks stronger than any of those that I can remember. The difference, of course, is that Grosjean managed to jump out of the car so quickly, whereas back in the day you'd be really risking other injuries when the cars were a lot more fragile. And the fact that Grosjean could walk away without a broken leg has meant that he can get out of that, because how any of those, the medical delegates did great, they were right up to it and they were giving it a good go, but how anyone was going to get in that in a hurry, it would have taken some doing. And the fact that Grosjean's got himself out is really, it's a huge help to him in that.
Yeah, so really good news, like you say, for Romain Grosjean. It's just that it really is the fire element that's really sort of blown my mind as well, because it's such an unusual thing to see. Like I say, for 30 years, 40 years, I can't think of a car being on fire like that in Formula One. Really can't. Jenny.
I just wanted to say, lots of you getting in touch. Please do keep on doing that. Hashtag is BBCF1, or you can email us f1@bbc.co.uk. And Jerry Sisk has been in touch because I said that the medical delegate, Dr. Ian Roberts, was the man who kind of went to Romain Grosjean first and put his arms to him and got him out from over the barrier. And Jerry says, when you next see him and are able to do so, please buy him a beer from every fan and driver on the planet. We are very, very grateful for all he and the Orange Army do week in, week out.
Yep, absolutely. Without the marshals, motorsport couldn't happen at any level. And of course, motorsport will be getting back underway in the UK when this current sort of lockdown ends, if you're in tier 1 or 2 anyway, although that most of the sort of British championships have wrapped up by now. I don't actually know if the plum pudding event at Mallory Park is going ahead, but a huge thanks to the marshals here and at every motor racing circuit around the world. Right, we are 40 seconds away from the cars going back out onto the circuit. Exactly how they're going to... Have they shuffled them in the pit lane?
No, they're going to do it on the way round to the grid.
Yeah.
So everyone's going to do some quick math, know how many cars you've got to overtake, who you've got to let through. And, of course, they'll have the radios. You'd have thought they'd be permitted the radios on this occasion to the grid just to make sure they are starting in the right slot.
And so, tyre-wise as well, look like some new hard tyres on one of the Alpha Tauris. So whether that was Gasly or Kvyat, I'm not 100% sure. I'd anticipate Kvyat, as he's down in 19th position at the moment after that contact with Grosjean. Most of them look as though they're staying on the same time. Maybe a new set of mediums for a Alfa Romeo in there. They look particularly shiny, but overall the front runners are still going out on those same medium tyres, I would have thought. Cars are to get in their correct grip position on the lap to the grid, so it will be a grid start as well, that is inferring to me. So we go again. Bottas will be starting in 4th position. Hamilton on pole, Verstappen second. Bottas has already got up into his 4th place ahead of Albon and Ricciardo. And then they come down the back straight. Hamilton slowing down past the sort of scene of Grosjean's accident. It is just the sort of naked concrete barriers there, which again isn't okay, people are overtaking each other, and that confused me, but of course they're all trying to get back into their grid slot. But yeah, it is just naked concrete barriers. There's no tyres or Tech Pro or anything in front of them, but we'll now put the thoughts of Romain Grosjean's accident as far as we can to the back of our minds and concentrate on the 55-lap Grand Prix that we're going to have here. Max Verstappen, well actually it might be 56, mightn't it? It depends whether they count this as a lap or not on the restart. I presume the race has sort of restarted at the moment, and it'll be a 55-lap Grand Prix. But Hamilton, Verstappen, Perez, Albon, Ricciardo, the top... No, I'm reading the wrong order. Hamilton, Verstappen, Perez, Bottas, Albon will be the top 5. Ricciardo, Norris, Ocon, Gasly and Vettel, the top 10. Sainz, Stroll, Leclerc, Giovinazzi and Magnussen, the top 15. Although they've just started swapping around. And then Kvyat, Raikkonen, Russell and Latifi will be the 19 drivers to get the race underway. So Russell had a terrible start off the line then, didn't he? He managed to go down to 18th position, having started the race a little higher up the order.
Starts are not his forte, George Russell, and he was behind Grosjean when Grosjean had his accident, and he did very well yesterday to out-qualify him and get into 14th on the grid. So Russell and Latifi back to the back of the pack, 18th and 19th. Here we go, through turn 12, turn 13. It's going to be a standing start again. Verstappen v Hamilton at the front.
So the car's coming around through the final turn. Actually, they're only at turn 13, aren't they? And then they'll head down the back straight. Hamilton doing quite a slow, bunched up formation lap at the moment, as the cars head down the straight towards 14 and 15. And then he really blasted it down the back straight and then slowed down again towards the final corner. So Hamilton now coming out onto the start-finish straight. The safety car pulls into the pit lane. The top 8 all on medium tyres. Gasly in 9th and Vettel in 10th are on the hard. So it was Gasly who has changed then to a new hard compound of tyre. Interesting strategical decision there for AlphaTauri. That'll be fascinating to see what happens as the race progresses. Remember, we're still expecting multiple pit stops in this Grand Prix. Bottas is starting in 4th. Can he try and climb up the order anymore? Can Verstappen try and get ahead of Hamilton at the start of this Grand Prix? He's going to be on the inside line as they line up ready for the start. Jenny.
Yeah, just looking at the cars that have changed tyres. So Gasly in 9th has gone to the hard. Vettel has gone to the hard as well. Leclerc has gone from the hard to the medium. And Sainz staying on a soft tyre, a new soft tyre. So he'll be one to watch from P13.
Josh lets me know that the plum pudding is cancelled, but there are some MSVR and 750 Motor Club season finales at Donington Park over the next 2 weekends if you want to get over and see some real live motorsport in the UK once this lockdown has concluded. So we're about to get going again with the Bahrain Grand Prix. At the back of the grid, Russell and Latifi pull into position. Romain Grosjean won't be taking the restart after his fiery, terrifying crash in the first race. Let's see what happens second time around. Hamilton on pole, Verstappen's alongside him. Perez and Bottas are on row 2 as the race gets underway. Decent start from Hamilton, and Verstappen is struggling a little. Bottas has got a better start this time, and Perez is up into second place. Alex Albon is looking to the outside, coming into turn 1. Bottas holds on. Verstappen just keeps second position, rolls it in deep, holds on to that place. Hamilton leads the way, Verstappen second, Perez third. He's under big pressure from Bottas as they come up towards turn 4. Looks to the inside, does Valtteri Bottas, but Perez is able to hold it on around the outside on the brakes. Albon fancies a look around the outside of Bottas, around the outside of turn 4, then side by side through 5 and 6. Albon can't quite pull it off. A nice, audacious attempt from the Red Bull man, but he is still in that 5th position. Hamilton leads, Verstappen second, Perez third, Bottas 4th, Albon 5th, Norris, Ocon, Leclerc, Gasly, Ricciardo, the rest of the top 10.
So the top 5 unchanged, but there was racy
there's
stuff.
A crash at the back, and I think Lance Stroll is involved, as is maybe Antonio Giovinazzi, and the safety car is deployed. Lance Stroll down at turn 8 has ended up in a collision. It might just be him actually that's involved at the moment, and so the safety car is deployed and Hamilton will slow the field down. The safety car is out and Lance Stroll is upside down at turn 8.
Okay, I'm hanging upside down.
Are you okay? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Stroll is okay, and he is upside down in that racing point at the moment. So another dramatic accident on the opening lap of the Bahrain Grand Prix. Stroll has managed to slither out from underneath the upside down racing point. He'll get into the medical car. This might be able to be dealt with behind the safety car, you would have thought, but we'll wait and see what happens. What happened then to Lance Stroll? He's coming down into turn 8, and it's the AlphaTauri on the inside of Kvyat, isn't it? It is. So Kvyat again in contact. This time it's Stroll that gets turned over as they all pincered into turn 8.
Wow, some 11 corners Kvyat's had so far.
Yeah.
Pitching Grosjean into the wall, although I don't blame him for that one. And Stroll, I'd say Stroll chopped straight to an apex when, again, Kvyat was on his inside. I don't think I blame the Russian for this one either. It was up the inside of Stroll into turn 8, and Stroll came across like he wasn't there and flipped himself upside down. Yeah, 2 for Kvyat, but honestly, I don't blame him for either.
Yeah, he wasn't super alongside Stroll, but Stroll was...
You can't come and take an apex from out wide there.
Agreed.
Up again, I mean, you can't just do that as if I wasn't there. It's the same as Austria, seriously. This time I should have crashed. Maybe it was the better option.
Not sure who Vettel's got his angst against.
I think it might be Stroll. Vettel hit Stroll on the first start, and that sent Stroll out wide. I think Vettel might be angsty with Stroll, and then Stroll's done exactly the same to Kvyat, and he's found himself upside down. That's my hunch. Although we didn't see the replay of exactly what had frustrated Sebastian Vettel, but he's lost 6 places on that first lap.
I think the audio and the pictures we saw were not related, because I'm being told that we think it was Leclerc that he had the issue with, because Vettel was a long way down the order. He's now down in 16th place behind the 2 Williams, and it was in Austria that he and Leclerc had a sort of a bit of an argy-bargy, didn't they? So on the opening lap, so we think it was an incident with Leclerc, but we'll see if we can get to the bottom of that. So Vettel now then down in 16th position. The order is Hamilton, Verstappen, Perez, Bottas, Albon the top 5, Norris, Ocon, Leclerc, Ricciardo, Gasly the top 10, Sainz, Kvyat, Raikkonen, Latifi, Russell the top 15, and then Vettel, Giovinazzi and Magnussen, the 18 drivers. We're getting a replay now of what happened with Vettel.
So curiously, the Ferraris have swapped strategies. Vettel now on the hards, Leclerc on the mediums, and Vettel minding his own business down to turn 1.
Up again, I mean, you can't just do that as if I wasn't there. It's the same as Austria, seriously. This time
Okay, we need to see a replay on.
Maybe it was the better option.
From that angle.
All morning we talk about giving room, and then you go into the tiniest gap that doesn't exist, and you just pray that the other guy just sees you and moves out of the way.
from that onboard with Vettel, looked sort of all right for me for what Leclerc did, but we'll wait. And Bottas has pitted. Valtteri Bottas has pitted onto a set of hard tyres. So that is, if that's not a suggestion that, well,
puncture. He must have had a slow puncture.
Yeah.
The only reason you'd sacrifice all track position right now to go from 4th down to 16th is if you've got a slow puncture. The Mercedes mechanics have taken off his medium tyres that he wanted to start the race on. You know, they would never have put a set of mediums on and then pitted after 8 corners of use to put a hard on strategically. So Bottas must have seen a slow puncture in the data. He must have hit someone, but we didn't see it. He got very close with Perez.
Jenny Gow.
Yeah, just to give you an update on Valtteri Bottas, the Mercedes team have confirmed he had a puncture, so he did have to come in, and that's why he swapped onto the hard tyres.
Okay, so Bottas then down to 16th position. His afternoon just got quite a bit tougher. Stroll's car is being lifted up then, hoisted away by the racing point, the top of the racing point. And hopefully it won't be too long before the racing gets underway again. Here's Science's radio.
What a race. Thank God he's okay.
Science on the radio saying what a race. Well, we haven't actually had any racing yet, have we?
Not much of a race so far. 11 corners through 2 restarts, 2 starts, and now we're going to get a restart coming up shortly. But Stroll's car still on the racetrack down at turn 8.
Hamilton leading, Verstappen second, Perez third, Albon fourth, Norris is fifth, Ocon, Leclerc, Ricciardo, Gasly and Sainz the top 10, Kvyat, Raikkonen, Latifi, Russell, Vettel the top 15, Bottas, Giovinazzi, Magnussen top 18. Fastest lap of the Grand Prix so far, George Russell on a 2:16.4. So
knew he was quick.
Yeah. Exactly. But still, I would say he's got not a good shot at points today, but if the race keeps going like this, we'll wait and see. Safety car then still deployed.
Well, one of those that's dropped out would have been at the back anyway. Grosjean isn't exactly a big name to drop out from point-scoring contention, and Stroll's had a tricky weekend, which he's just ended very prematurely as well. So it doesn't actually really help the likes of the Williams and the Alfa Romeos to score points. Normally when there's this level of incident at the start of Grand Prix, you think it's a good day for some of these tail enders, but it's not changed.
Jesus, quite an eventful race so far.
Well, the race started an hour and a half ago.
These drivers, you know, for the likes of Max Verstappen, they've obviously all been out the car for a long time, and they've seen Grosjean's crash. Then they'll have done a restart, seen a safety car, come around and see a car upside down in the middle of the track. They must just be thinking, what is going on today? It's just the next lap you do, within 8 corners, there's a car upside down. How often do we get that? Not very often, but it's just all happened in 2 starts in Bahrain here.
So we have hopefully not too many laps before the safety car gets back underway. Perez got a good restart, but Verstappen went nowhere and was quite fortunate really to keep that second place. He sent it in super late on the brakes and just managed to keep in front of Perez.
They were so close to touching as well. Verstappen was really aggressive at turn 1. He knew he had to be to try and keep honest with Lewis Hamilton out front, and he was just deeper on the brakes than Perez from the inside. Really trusted the Mexican and was just about okay to do that. That then put Perez on the back foot and ironically allowed Bottas to get a big run on him, but Bottas couldn't make a move at turn 4 and has since had a puncture and a change of tyres. So whilst I was saying the guys at the back, it's not necessarily a day for them just yet. It is a day for that podium battle, because Perez is now 3rd ahead of Albon. Lando Norris is up to 5th. Ricciardo's had a bad start in all of that. He's down to 8th position. But one of those guys is going to have a great chance of a podium unless Bottas can charge through now from 16th.
So safety car still out. No word yet of when the safety car is going to come back in. And Stroll's accident in the end was not a big deal.
That's not a huge deal at all. The cars do get turned upside down from time to time, and it was a low speed impact and on the slowest part of the track as well, down at the turn 8 hairpin. So it just looks bad when the drivers come back through and see a car upside down. But in actual fact, Stroll will be absolutely fine with that one.
Good to see the wheel tethers working as well. The front left was skewing all over the place, but it was managed to stay secure to the car, and that's one of the other safety features that is such a benefit at these times.
So safety car still out. Looks as though the car is mostly recovered. Just trying to see where it actually was, but the safety car lights might go out on this back straight. We're on lap 7 of 57 without having done a lap. And the safety car lights are staying on at the moment, so I think we will get one more lap out of this. A reminder of the order: Hamilton, Verstappen, Perez, Albon, Norris, Ocon, Leclerc, Ricciardo, Gasly, Sainz, Kvyat, Raikkonen, Latifi, Russell, Vettel, the top 15. Bottas has been in for a second pit stop, and then Giovinazzi and Magnussen as well has been in for a second pit stop. How long do we have? We've still got an hour and 44 remaining on the race time, so from that front we haven't lost anything in terms of that. There is the sort of overall window.
But it looks like you picked some debris between 3 and 4 on that tyre, probably from the shunt previous start.
Okay, so Bottas being told that you picked up a bit of debris and that's what caused the slow puncture.
But Bottas is often picking up debris from previous crashes, I'm sure. He had a bit of debris when he was leading the race in Imola and lost a lot of performance. I think he ran over Sebastian Vettel's part of Vettel's front wing, end plate or barge board or something. Then, do you remember in Baku when he was all set to win the race in 2018 and he got a bit lucky with the safety car? Then he led the race with 3 laps to go and he ran over a bit of debris and got a puncture there, which meant he retired from the Grand Prix. It feels like he often has that. He's unlucky in that way.
Yeah. Safety car still out. Hamilton and Verstappen weaving their tyres around. This will be good for... Have you said this will be good for making tyres last or not?
Yeah, I was about to say that.
For those on a one-stop.
Yeah. For those on a one-stop, this race was going to be close between a two-stop and a one-stop, and we were all so excited about having a two-stop race. But we've just lost 8 laps from the Grand Prix, which I think is going to move it to probably a one-stop race with a bit of tyre management. There's Sainz and Kvyat on a soft tyre. It makes their life a little bit harder to try and stretch that. But it definitely helps those who are on a hard tyre. Bottas now from the back, but then also Vettel from 15th and Pierre Gasly up in 9th.
Right, safety car in this lap. We'll try again. And Hamilton will be leading the way. Verstappen will be right behind him. Then Perez in 3rd, Albon in 4th, Norris in 5th. I'm always curious about, this isn't the time to ask you, but I'm always curious about safety car restarts, how rarely things change and things happen. They must be obviously really difficult, because you remember when Montoya came into F1, he always nailed the restarts because of his time in IndyCar and that sort of thing. Verstappen sends it up the inside of Hamilton going into turn 13. But apart from Imola, where who was made a big mistake at Ravazza? Was that Albon or Stroll? Or
there was a big offset in tyres, wasn't there? And that's what caused it. Albon did.
Yeah, but you never see a huge amount of changing around. But we'll see if that is going to remain the case this time. Sergio Perez lurking behind Lewis Hamilton. They're going slowly, and there goes Hamilton now. Verstappen's gone with him pretty well. I tell you what, Verstappen's got a shot here. Coming through the final right-hander of turn 14, then through 15, but the Mercedes is so quick. That was almost a perfect restart for Verstappen, but he's going to be too far back as racing gets back underway. Hamilton leading, Verstappen second. Perez might fancy a look for second position. I don't think he's going to be quite close enough. Looks like there might be some front wing damage on an Alfa Romeo further back. Ocon is going side by side with Charles Leclerc, and Ocon is going around the outside at turn 1 of Charles Leclerc. Raikkonen's got ahead of Nicolas Latifi. Bottas has lost out to Vettel. Bottas has lost a place at the restart, and he's under big pressure from the Alfa Romeo of Giovinazzi behind. Sainz has got past Gasly and up into 9th position. Charles Leclerc has now lost out to Daniel Ricciardo as well. So Ocon in 6th. Oh, no, he hasn't. He's managed to stay ahead then. So Leclerc in 7th position, Ricciardo 8th, 9th is Sainz. Hamilton still leads.
It's been Leclerc on the attack with Ocon, I think, on this restart, but he's not made it through. I'll tell you what, Bottas's restarts have been really poor all season, but he's not been punished at the front. Now he's further back. He's had another poor restart, and Sebastian Vettel has punished him. Verstappen's restart was aggressive and it was good. He was really close to Lewis Hamilton into the final corner, but actually Hamilton nailed the final corner and just cleared away whilst Verstappen had a bit of dirty air. He was maybe too close.
Oh, Ricciardo's made a mistake. He's locked up coming into turn 8, and that means he's lost out now to Carlos Sainz. So Sainz is up into 8th position. The order is Hamilton, Verstappen, Perez, Albon, Norris, the top 5, Ocon, Leclerc, Sainz, Ricciardo and Gasly, the top 10. Then Kvyat, Raikkonen, Russell, Latifi, Vettel, the top 15. Bottas still behind Sebastian Vettel in the Ferrari. Giovinazzi and Magnussen, the last 2 runners, as we come through to start lap 10 of 57. Hamilton sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. 1.1 seconds clear of Max Verstappen, who was 0.4 of a second slower. And then it's Perez in 3rd still. Raikkonen dramatically moving to the inside of the Williams in front. No DRS just yet at the moment. In fact, I think that was Russell going past Raikkonen down the start straight, and Russell's up into 12th place.
Yeah, good restart from George Russell. Still, we've got Valtteri Bottas in 16th, and now behind Sebastian Vettel. They're on the same tyre, on the hard tyre. And Bottas restarted behind Vettel though, didn't he? Because he came through the pits, I'm pretty sure. And he's actually attacking Vettel into turn 4, but not making it through. Those guys are on the hard tyre. They're going to be going a long way into this race. Out front, Verstappen 1 second behind Hamilton. He's close enough still. This is okay for Max Verstappen in terms of challenging Hamilton for the lead. He's just got to manage those tyres a little bit now.
Oh, well then Vettel must have got ahead of Vettel and then back past, because I certainly saw Vettel going ahead of Bottas. But anyway, that's the fight over 15th position at the moment as they come down the back straight in towards turn 8. Lap 10 of 57, Jenny.
Yeah, Carlos Sainz started on the new set of the soft tyres. He's now up to 8th place, and the team will be looking for him to stay out as long as he can. Chances are he'll try and get to around 10 laps into this new part of the race before he comes in, but there'll be a lot of people watching what those tyres do.
Certainly will be. Leclerc and Kvyat are under investigation for causing an incident, and we'll see what comes of that.
Kvyat and Stroll is under investigation for causing an incident. I'm not entirely sure what the Leclerc-Kvyat one is for right now.
No.
But it is Kvyat and Stroll that's popped, unless you've seen something different to me. It's Kvyat and Stroll that are under investigation.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Stroll's out the Grand Prix, having been flipped upside down by Kvyat. But I think it'd be harsh to penalise Kvyat for that one. I think Stroll moved across too much on him.
Yeah, no, agreed. Lap 11 of 57. Hamilton leading 1.4 seconds clear of Verstappen in 2nd place. And you can hear it's Valtteri Bottas still behind Sebastian Vettel in 15th position. Vettel in the Ferrari trying to chase down Nicholas Latifi in the Williams. Verstappen in the early stages is keeping quite close to the back of Lewis Hamilton. Bottas, lock up from Vettel. That could be Bottas's opportunity. You can see, here's Verstappen's radio.
My car is jumping around like a kangaroo, I swear.
Presumably he's talking about down another big lockup from Vettel. Bottas also locks up almost in sympathy. Verstappen saying his car's bouncing around like a kangaroo. Presumably he means sort of bottoming out on the straights.
Yeah, maybe. The Red Bull car's always very low, and it seems to be bottoming out a little bit more than most, but it doesn't seem to be affecting him too much. Still, he's a second and a half behind Lewis Hamilton, but he's going okay. Bottas had a little look to the inside of Vettel at turn 8, and it was never going to be happening, but it just pressured Vettel into a mistake. He locked up and then locked up again, and those guys are on the hard tyre, remember. They want to be going a long way into this race, and Vettel locking up like this early on is not going to be helping his race.
Yeah, they have just corrected that it is Kvyat and Stroll that's under investigation. Carlos Sainz sends one at the inside of Charles Leclerc coming down into turn 1. Nice committed move there from Sainz. DRS is available now, and Leclerc will get DRS back at Sainz. Up the hill towards turn 4, goes to the inside, and Sainz holds on around the outside. He was quite aggressive on defence, Sainz, but ultimately did leave Leclerc room. Leclerc has a huge tank slapper as he tries to get on the power. Almost did what Vettel did last year with Hamilton, and now Ricciardo's going aggressive on Leclerc down into turn 8. That is classic Ricciardo, taking full advantage and getting ahead of the Ferrari into 8th position.
Brilliant move there from Daniel Ricciardo, opportunistic, and that came from Leclerc having a huge moment, exit of turn 4. It was carbon copy of Vettel, apart from he didn't spin. It was brilliant car control, but he has lost a couple of places. Sainz very aggressive right now on the softs, and Leclerc still looking in his mirrors now, weaving ahead of Pierre Gasly and then Daniel Kvyat, the two Alpha Tauris now on the back of the Ferrari man for 9th place.
Lap 12 of 57, Hamilton leading. His gap now ahead of Verstappen is 1.8 seconds. It's 5 seconds back to Perez, 7 seconds to Albon, 10 to Norris in 5th position, and Vettel has dropped behind Giovinazzi and Magnussen. So something has happened on this lap so far to Sebastian Vettel. He's now down into 18th and last place. The order is Hamilton, Verstappen, Perez, Albon, Norris, the top 5. Ocon, Sainz, Ricciardo, Leclerc and Gasly, the top 10. Kvyat, Russell, Raikkonen, Latifi, Bottas, the top 15. And then it is Giovinazzi, Magnussen and Vettel, the 18 drivers still running. Here comes the attack from Pierre Gasly, passing Leclerc now down into turn 1. The Alpha Tauri up the inside of the Ferrari, and Gasly is through. Leclerc will get the DRS on the run back up the hill towards turn 4, but the Ferrari powertrain in the back of that Scarlet car might struggle. Looks to the outside, and he can't quite do it. Daniel Kvyat has been given a 10-second time penalty for causing a collision.
Preposterous that he can get a 10-second time penalty for that. Kvyat gets penalties because he's Daniel Kvyat. He does. He must be thinking, what on earth now? He's had 2 incidents. He puts his car maybe in some more sketchy areas than others, but we've seen Charles Leclerc biff off Lance Stroll in Russia on the opening lap. Nothing. Here, Kvyat does a similar sort of thing to the same driver, Lance Stroll. 10-second penalty, not even a 5-second penalty, a 10-second penalty. It's incredible.
Yeah, 5-second penalty, I would say, okay. No, I don't think I would actually, because Stroll went fully for the apex.
Stroll went right up to the apex curb. You can't be doing that when there's a car on your inside. You can't be. So Kvyat getting that penalty is ridiculous. He got a huge penalty in China last year, which was also ridiculous. I mean, it's crazy. And his race is done, basically, with that 10-second penalty. He's having a good drive in 11th right now, but he's going to have to take a 10-second penalty at his pit stop, and it's going to put him right back.
Lap 14 of 57, Hamilton leading, Verstappen 2nd, Perez 3rd, Albon 4th, Norris in 5th, 6th position, Esteban Ocon, Jenny.
Yeah, and he's been told to look after the tyres that he's on. He's on the medium set of tyres, I believe, and it's clear that they're changing their strategies as they go. A lot of these drivers would have expected maybe a 3-stop, and now, because of everything that's happened, it's turning into a 1-stop.
Bottas is making a move on Nicholas Latifi. He gets him into 14th place. Not sure what's happened to Vettel. I mean, he's on the hard tyre, but he's now dropped to last place and is off the back of Kevin Magnussen. Leclerc's falling back through the order like something that falls backwards quickly. And meanwhile, Hamilton is leading the Grand Prix 2.1 seconds up the road from Max Verstappen in these still sort of early stages, even though it was 2 hours ago where we came on air. He's 2.2 seconds ahead of Verstappen in 2nd position. The Ferraris, Jenny, as I say, there definitely is front wing damage on Kimi Raikkonen's car. The front left not looking good. Ferrari, Jenny.
Yes, Kimi Raikkonen has reported to the team, by the way, and the team have said they're looking at it. Don't know how much help they can actually be until he comes in for a pit stop, when they might be able to do a front wing change for him. But Vettel has been on the radio saying the car is undrivable. I think we can see that.
Lap 15 of 57.
He's having lockups, Sebastian Vettel, and he had a couple under pressure from Bottas. I wonder if he's struggling with some flat spots on the hard tyres. There's not really an option he's got right now. He wants to be taking these tyres a long way. That's the strategy he chose at the red flag. And right now it's looking like a difficult night for him.
Yeah, will this Grand Prix ever end? Lap 15 of 57, Hamilton 2.6 seconds clear of Verstappen out in front. Sergio Perez in 4th position, 2.5 ahead of Alex Albon in 4th spot at the moment. So again, we're in that situation where Albon is not putting anywhere near pressure on Sergio Perez, and he's lapping 0.7 of a second a lap slower than his teammate. Another Pax using hashtag BBC F1 says, I should be cooking my dinner now. Sort yourselves out, Formula One. Cook your dinner as well at the same time. Surely you can.
It's the beauty of radio, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Lap 15 of 57.
Verstappen dropping back, nearly 3 seconds adrift of Hamilton, who right now looks under control. Tyre management is going to be an issue for anyone still trying to do a one-stop. Is going to have to be they're going to have to nurse the tyres a little bit. But right now, Hamilton's never struggled with tyre management, and he looks like he's got the race under control for now. Verstappen's not a million miles back, and he's able to keep pressure on, but he'll need to get closer during the pit stop phase to try and force Mercedes to do something different.
2.6 seconds is the gap at the moment. Valtteri Bottas is now up behind Kimi Raikkonen with the aforementioned flappy front wing in the battle over 13th position. The sound you can hear is Raikkonen looking in his mirror as they come down towards turn 1. Is Bottas going to be close enough? He's not, which is quite surprising considering the Mercedes straight line speed advantage, but there we go.
DRS for both. Raikkonen's got DRS open. He's within a second of George Russell, and that's not helping Valtteri Bottas. But Bottas is in a far quicker car, and he's not got front wing damage, as Kimi Raikkonen is driving around with.
Lap 16 of 57. Hamilton leading the Grand Prix. Verstappen, Perez, Albon, Norris, the top 5. There's 3 seconds between Hamilton and Verstappen now. Then it's 5 seconds back to Sergio Perez, 2.5 to Albon, 5 to Norris, then 2 to Ocon, 2 to Sainz, 2 to Ricciardo, 2 to Gasly, 2 to Leclerc pretty much, and then Leclerc to Kvyat is actually the closest fight in that top 10 positions. Russell's running quite nicely in 12th position, although Raikkonen can't get ahead of him, and you feel that once Bottas gets ahead of Raikkonen, Bottas will be able to get ahead of Russell, but still running fairly nicely with Latifi, Giovinazzi, Magnussen, the top 17, Sebastian Vettel, Jenny, the last of the runners.
Yeah, I've just been speaking to Ferrari, actually. The team think he spun. Now, we didn't see it, and they didn't see it, but they think that the car is driving erratically and undrivable, as Vettel says, as a consequence.
Yeah, we had a huge delay after a terrifying fiery crash for Romain Grosjean when the car split in 2. He was okay. He's been taken to the hospital for minor burns and potentially some damage to his ribs. Then the race got started again. We had a brief safety car period because Lance Stroll was then flipped upside down in a crash with Daniel Kvyat. But we're now 17 laps into the 57, and Hamilton is leading the way, 3.4 seconds ahead of Max Verstappen. His teammate Valtteri Bottas had to pit for a puncture on the opening lap, so he's down in 13th spot. As you say, full commentary on 5 Live Sports Extra. They asked me to do 15 seconds on 5 Live, but I can't do this race in 15 seconds. You having a laugh? Lap 17 of 57. But I would agree with the Vettel spin theory because, as I said at the time, he was ahead of Bottas still, wasn't he? Or had he just lost out to Bottas, and then suddenly he plummeted down the order. Ricciardo was pitted also. Yeah, Vettel did just go in one moment to the back. Now Ricciardo is pitted to the back, 18th out of the 18 runners, and he's on a set of hard tyres. Valtteri Bottas he's having his race come completely undone by not being able to pass Kimi Raikkonen. Raikkonen's still within a second of Russell and still has DRS, and Bottas can't make a simple DRS pass on Raikkonen, so he's going to have to get adventurous. He's losing 3 seconds a lap to Lewis Hamilton. So any thought that he could do something different on strategy by starting effectively on a hard tyre is not looking great for him, but he's shedding so much time. But what I was saying last time around was that I know Raikkonen had DRS, but Bottas had DRS as well. They both DRS'd up, and you would think, Raikkonen pits, that's happy news for Bottas. Ocon comes into the pits as well to go onto a set of mediums, but my point is now irrelevant. Both Renaults committing early then to pit stops. Yep, that's very early, so that's still looking like a 2-stop for both Renaults then. There's no way that Ocon's getting to the end of the race on the mediums. They both lost places at the start, and Ricciardo particularly had tumbled to the fringe of the top 10. Slow stop for Kvyat after the 10-second penalty as well, and he's going to come out right with Kimi Raikkonen. So that's not
good in the slightest for him, 15.5 seconds, so an extra few seconds on his pit stop. But yeah, Ricciardo lost places early on, and I think they're just trying to gamble now to try and undercut and do something different, Renault.
Russell into 9th, lap 18 of 57. Jenny.
Yeah, I think they've locked into the medium two-stop strategy for Ocon, because he started on the mediums, according to my notes, and he's just gone to another set of mediums. Valtteri Bottas is having a dog day of it, though. His brakes are hot, so he's having to make sure that he's not always in the slipstream, so he can try and cool them. Remember, this Mercedes, not built to be at the back of the pack, is it? Quite clearly, it does well at the front, but in traffic, it always clogs up a little bit.
Yeah, lap 19 of 57. We'll see what they can do over the remainder of this Grand Prix. And there, straight away, goes Ricciardo to pass Sebastian Vettel. Lando Norris pits as well in the McLaren. So Lando Norris pitting too from what was fifth position.
So that's to cover off the Renaults then. Norris covering off Ocon, who was behind him. He exits the pits. Where is Ocon going to be? The undercut's going to be powerful here because degradation is high. Norris comes out alongside Giovinazzi, just behind Latifi, slots in between the two, who were having their own fight. And importantly for him, he slots 3 seconds clear of Esteban Ocon. So nice and easy. Good work from McLaren.
And now, immediately, Lando Norris goes past Nicholas Latifi's Williams. So Norris back up into 10th place. George Russell now running in 8th position, but he's only half a second ahead of Valtteri Bottas now, because those two are fighting it out for position. You would think that in clear air, Bottas went a second quicker than George Russell on that last lap once the Alfa Romeo of Kimi Raikkonen pitted. Mercedes ready in the pit lane then. Hamilton has a 5-second lead and he's pitting now. Lap 19 of 57. In comes the Mercedes driver, pulls into his pit stop. Off go the mediums, on go the mediums. And out he goes onto the track. So again, another early commitment to a two-stop strategy, because you have to use 2 tyre compounds. Also into the pits comes Alex Albon. So yeah, two-stopper for Mercedes.
Two-stopper for pretty much everyone still then. I thought taking away 7 laps from this race would make it more towards the 1. We thought a normal race would be still 2, but the degradation clearly still higher than anyone was hoping for a 1-stop. And it is going to be 2's the way. Verstappen stays out, Perez stays out in now 1st and 2nd. What do Red Bull do? Can they afford to do something different to Hamilton, or are they going to lose too much time on the worn mediums?
Verstappen is running 1.6 seconds slower than his best lap time of the session so far. So that's the kind of speed loss that Verstappen is dealing with at the moment, and it's whether that's worth staying out for to only do 1 pit stop, when because now basically Verstappen is 17 seconds clear of Hamilton, but they both have to pit again.
But Sainz is still going on his softs that he started on and ticking along okay, only 2/10 away from what he's done in the race, and 9/10 away from Verstappen, but in a McLaren that's not as quick as Verstappen. So he's doing a good job on the soft. Ricciardo absolutely steaming it down the inside of Antonio Giovinazzi, with Giovinazzi and Latifi still having their own battle, and Ricciardo opportunistically into turn 8, absolutely flinging it to the inside, all locked up. Giovinazzi thought about making a move on Latifi himself, and then saw a flash of yellow on his right-hand side and thought better of it. Verstappen now pits.
Yeah, Verstappen into the pits then, but he goes onto the hards. So is that the 1-stop move?
It's a good move that for Verstappen, because it'll give him a tyre offset at the end of the race. Whichever way, even if he does a 2-stop, he'll have a faster tyre at the end of the race, and you never know what can happen with a safety car or anything else. So it's a sensible move that for Red Bull to do something different, basically, to Mercedes, because Hamilton has got the measure of Verstappen in terms of pace. You can't copy them because you'll simply lose. So doing something different is the way to go. And Verstappen emerges still in 2nd place behind Lewis Hamilton, who regains the lead, because Perez pitted as well for also a set of hard tyres.
Jenny.
Yeah, they're going to really have to hold their nerve on those hard tyres. I've spoken to Pirelli and I spoke to the teams before this race. They reckon the most you could get out of a hard tyre was around 30 laps. Now they're around 35, 36 laps on these hard tyres if they can go to the end. Ricciardo with 40 laps. They think that's too much. So maybe a switch to the softs towards the end of the race and make it feisty?
Yeah, it may well be the case, especially as the softs are looking pretty decent in the hands of Carlos Sainz, who's running in that third spot at the moment. Hamilton leads and has pitted. Second is Max Verstappen, who has also made, let's call it, one pit stop for the sake of argument. Carlos Sainz is third, having not stopped on the soft compound of tyre. Gasly is fourth at the moment, who also has yet to pit. Same is true of Charles Leclerc in sixth position. Sergio Perez in fifth has made a pit stop. I'm saying for the sake of argument, we're calling it a 1 and 2 stopper because technically, according to the sort of timing screens, they have all been in the pits once, but that was behind the safety car, so it doesn't really count. So you can hear is Sainz doing a solid job on his softs. Now he comes into the pits, so almost irrelevant him being on the softs in the first stint.
But it does show that that the softs are working similar to the mediums right now. There's not been a massive pace differential between the soft and the medium through the weekend, and again, in terms of degradation, Sainz hasn't lost a lot by being on those softs, and in fact had a good start with them.
Yeah, Alex Albon gets ahead of Charles Leclerc for what is fifth position, but Leclerc is yet to pit. Norris is going to come, is in eighth place. Ocon is in ninth. Then it's Ricciardo in 10th. Sainz comes out behind Daniel Ricciardo in 11th position then. So it's the McLaren in 8th, the two Renaults in 9th and 10th, and then the other McLaren of Carlos Sainz in 11th position, having started in 15th on the grid. Nicholas Latifi now pits for the Williams team, but Gasly there in third place has only made hasn't made a pit stop yet, but he's been caught quite quickly by Sergio Perez on this lap. There's just half a second between them in their squabble over third place. They're not actually fighting each other on track, which will be a bit of a disappointment for Gasly, but his main focus is on the Leclerc in sixth position behind him.
And Perez's main focus is going to be on Albon behind him by 2.8 seconds. This is the battle for third place still, and they've pitted and come out ahead of Valtteri Bottas, who's in seventh now, behind Charles Leclerc. So Bottas may yet be able to do a pit stop less. With everyone going to a two-stop, if Bottas can somehow make a one-stop work, he's got a chance to get back into the fight. But those early laps were very, very costly for him, and of course the puncture. So it's going to be tough.
Here comes Sergio Perez on Pierre Gasly to move up into third position, which is where he is running net in that racing point. And once again, here's Verstappen's radio.
Yeah, we have nothing to lose here, so we just go full set.
Copy. So Verstappen is just going to drive really fast and see what happens, I think. Because on that last lap, he was over a second quicker than Hamilton. He did the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. And I think their theory is, if we burn through these tyres, we burn through these tyres. Whatever, let's just drive as fast as I can and see what happens.
12 seconds ahead of Perez. It is pretty much a two-horse race at the front of this, which is no surprise after Bottas's puncture. So Verstappen is just giving it a go now. 4 seconds back. Probably he'll burn through these tyres very quickly and need a new set to try and get to the end of the race. He doesn't want to have to do a three-stop by just completely destroying this hard tyre, because a medium isn't lasting very well to try and get to the end of the race with even 20 laps to go. And he's got 14 more laps to get to that point. So he can't be too kamikaze right now, Max Verstappen, but giving it a good go. He's got very little pressure from behind. It makes sense.
Lap 24 of 57. Albon now is going to try and pass Pierre Gasly. Again, Albon has pitted for new tyres. Stint not really working out for Gasly. Okay, he wasn't in this fight initially, but the AlphaTauri has had reasonable pace over the course of the weekend, but he's now about to fall down behind Alex Albon as they come down the start-finish straight. Albon to the inside. Albon beating Perez is something that I think he would would be really good for him this afternoon. Okay, he's already, 15 seconds behind his teammate Verstappen, but if he could beat Perez in the fight, that would at least show a bit of something from Alex Albon. Although, you have to question, if Perez was in the Red Bull, would he still be in third place and closer to Verstappen than Albon is doing? And those are the questions that will be going through the minds of the Red Bull team at the moment.
That's the minimum, really, I think the Red Bull will be wanting from Albon. He out-qualified Perez, and these are the two that are in contention for that drive, really, in the second best team in Formula One right now, to be teammates with Max Verstappen for next year. Albon's under pressure, and he's 3 seconds right now behind Perez, having just cleared Pierre Gasly. He's got to try and win that personal battle, which could be for third place. It could be for another podium for him. So it's meaningful in more ways than one.
So Bottas has been told we're going to extend on the radio. So he's done 19 laps so far on these hard tyres. Not all of them, admittedly, at racing speed, but they're going to try and extend this stint, presumably to then have him with a set of softs later on in the Grand Prix in the closing stages. Because at the moment, he is a bit out of position because he hasn't properly pitted in this Grand Prix.
They're looking for a one-stop, I think, with Bottas, effectively, after having his puncture. Now they're looking to just make one more pit stop to go to the end. I think they'll try and stick on a set of mediums in 10 laps and see if that will go to the end for him. But he's under pressure here from Lando Norris. He might go backwards before long.
Norris looks to the inside, down into turn 1, sends it, and the McLaren goes through. So Lando Norris up into 6th position on admittedly fresher medium tyres, but still not ideal for Valtteri Bottas's Grand Prix, because both he and Norris will be looking to make one more pit stop this afternoon. And what lap times are the Renaults doing behind? They're lapping quicker than Bottas as well by some 0.4 of a second. So we could see the Renaults getting ahead of Bottas, with both of them making one more pit stop in theory. At the moment, Perez in 3rd also, incidentally, with Norris in 6th and 10th, and Renault in 8th and 9th, would mean that Racing Point still are holding their 3rd place in the Constructors' Championship.
If they're going to lose one driver from the race, they lost the right one, really. Lance Stroll, who's been he hasn't scored many points recently at all.
I agree, but he's the one they're keeping at the team. You know, that'll be the discussion, won't it?
Lose one driver from the race, but one from the team is very different. But Stroll scored 2 points in the last 6 Grand Prix. Perez has been doing all the work, and he's going to have to do all the work for the team again today, and it can be for that podium. Running in 3rd still, and with Bottas now going backwards, being caught and passed by Lando Norris, effectively Mercedes want to make it so he's on the same strategy. In effect, they've all got to make one more pit stop if Bottas does a one-stopper. But he's not got the pace at the moment. He's also hurt the tyres running in traffic, and in he comes to the pit, so that's not worked out for Bottas.
Okay, so they wanted to extend. They have not extended. Into the pit lane they come. Now Sainz is the man on the attack. He's right behind Daniel Ricciardo in the Renault, and is that Ocon letting Ricciardo through? No, it's not. Sainz snatches the front right tyre under braking, and I think he might have a run up to turn 4 here. Coming up towards the right-handers, Ricciardo covers the inside, Sainz is on the outside, and the McLaren is going to have to be pretty brave to get around the outside there. He's pulled it off. Nicely done from Carlos Sainz. Ricciardo on the hard tyre, admittedly, drops down to 8th position. So Norris is 5th, Ocon is 6th, Sainz is 7th, Ricciardo is 8th.
Sainz is having a great drive. Was one of the last ones to pit early on, even though he started on the soft tyres, so he's keeping the tyres alive quite well, and he's got really good pace. He's now herring off after Esteban Ocon, who's just ahead for 6th place. Ricciardo was also close behind Ocon, though. Ricciardo's caught Ocon, who was ahead after the start, but was not able to get through. It almost looked like Ocon was going to let his teammate through, but didn't, and that compromised Ricciardo, and through came Sainz. So not working well for Renault. Ocon being ahead of Ricciardo, they could have an interesting choice to make. They might have to swap those 2 drivers around for the sake of team points, which is so important to them right now.
So Bottas has emerged behind Kvyat then. He is in 14th position. As I say that, he's going to pass Kvyat on the run down towards turn 8, gets the inside line, and through he goes. So Bottas up into 13th place. The order, now that everybody has sort of done everybody has done their first pit stop, haven't they? So Hamilton is leading, Verstappen 2nd, Perez 3rd, Albon 4th, Norris 5th, Ocon 6th at the moment, but here comes Carlos Sainz in the McLaren. Ocon covers the inside, Sainz sends it to the outside, gets it almost done on the brakes into turn 1. He does. Ocon will have the DRS now on the run up towards turn 4, but I don't think he's going to be close enough. Sainz has done a very, very nice move, and he's now up into 6th place. So 5th and 6th for the McLarens.
Super impressive from Sainz. So committed on the brakes. Probably a good 10-20 metres later on the brakes than Ocon, and just sailed around the outside. Still managed to stop it at the inside for turn 2, and Ocon couldn't come back with DRS. So brilliant move for Sainz. Up to 6th, behind Lando Norris. McLaren looking quite good here.
Valtteri Bottas has got ahead of George Russell and is now up into 12th position on the back of Kevin Magnussen, who has made a stop. Lap 27 of 57, lap 28 of 57 now as Hamilton comes across the line, and Bottas sends it down into turn 8 and gets ahead of Magnussen 2 now. So the order is Hamilton, Verstappen, Perez, Albon, Norris the top 5, Sainz, Ocon, Ricciardo, Gasly, Leclerc the top 10, Bottas in 11th, Magnussen 12th, 13th Russell, 14th Kvyat, 15th Raikkonen, Giovinazzi, Vettel and Latifi the top 18 out of the Grand Prix, Stroll and Grosjean. There's a real possibility with the way the race is going for Bottas. Look, I think he's going to score some points today, don't get me wrong. How many is going to be the question. With Verstappen running in second place, second in the championship is up for grabs here for Max Verstappen. At the moment, you've got Bottas in second on 197. He's only 27 points clear of Verstappen. That would if Bottas didn't score today and Verstappen finished second, suddenly you're down to 10 points between them with 2 races to go. Imagine if Verstappen finished ahead of Bottas in the standings. That would be horrific for Bottas.
Hold your horses, Jack. There's a long way to go. Bottas is a minute off the race lead and he's down in 11th, but he was the last to pit as well, and now he's the fastest on track as a result. He's just set the fastest first sector of anyone anyway, and he's got Charles Leclerc ahead. Here's Verstappen.
Lewis is using a lot more of the track on the exit of turn 4, Max.
So Verstappen being told Hamilton is using a lot more of the track on the exit of turn 4. I'm not saying Verstappen, but the fact that it's sort of a discussion point and there's only 27 points between them is quite remarkable at this stage of the season.
It is, yeah. Both have had their own doses of bad luck as well through the season. Bottas at Silverstone, Verstappen at Mugello and Austria. There are cases for both of them that they should have scored more points. But it is the way it's going to go right now. I mean, this is another dose of bad luck, really, for Bottas to have a slow puncture, which is the reason he's fighting his way through the field. But Verstappen's done a great job for Red Bull, and with being the only driver in the team, really, as well, because Albon's just not been able to offer him anything all season in terms of support. He's done well, and he's still 5 seconds away from Lewis Hamilton. He's kept the pace up, and he's not dropped the tyres yet either. So 5 seconds away from Hamilton, approaching lap 30 of 57. Hamilton's still under control, but when they switched for tyres at the end, in theory, Bottas will be on the faster tyre. If Hamilton switches to a hard and Verstappen, will go to a medium.
Imola, did you mention Imola for Verstappen?
No, I didn't mention Imola for Verstappen, but that's another one.
Why are we racing each other? I think we need to do something.
So that's Ricciardo saying, why are we racing each other? Why am I, what is he, less than a second behind Esteban Ocon, lapping 0.3 of a second a lap quicker. And there we go, they're not racing each other anymore. Ocon pulls over, Ricciardo goes through. They're on different strategies as well. Ricciardo's 12 laps into his hard tyres, Ocon's 31 laps into his medium tyres. So that's a no-brainer really there for the Renault team. Lap 30 of 57, Hamilton leading, Verstappen second, Perez third, Albon fourth, Norris fifth, Sainz, Ricciardo, Ocon, Gasly and Leclerc, the top 10 at the moment. Bottas in 11th, Russell in 12th, 13th Kvyat, 14th Giovinazzi, 15th Raikkonen, Vettel, Latifi, Magnussen in the top 18.
Ocon's number 31. I don't think he's 31 laps into this set of tyres as we approach lap 30.
Isn't he?
No, he pitted about the same lap as Ricciardo. He's 11 laps into this set of tyres. The graphics done tricks with you there, Jack.
Well, one of the graphics says 31 laps. It hasn't done tricks with me. It's lied to me.
It's lied to you. And you... There's only 30 laps in the race. He can't have done 31 laps. He's been to the grid, and that counts as well.
Unless he put on old tyres or something, or he hasn't stopped. Jenny, help us out.
Yeah, I think he did put on old tyres, so he's now done 12 laps on these used set of mediums, but they'd already done laps. So in total, he has done 32 laps on these tyres, just not in the race. So it's even more confusing.
Okay.
Just one to watch out for, Gasly. I reckon he can go to the end without having to come in and pit again. He's used the mediums. He's gone onto the hards for the second kind of stop for him. So I reckon Gasly could be on for some serious points here because he doesn't have to come in again.
I don't know if he's been quick enough. He's in 9th at the moment.
Are you not going to apologise to me?
For saying that Ocon... look, the correct one is in the middle then. If Ocon's tyres have done that, but he's not been on that tyre for 31 laps. He's been on it for 11 laps, now 12 laps.
OK, his tyres are 31 laps old.
which he put on 11 laps ago. If Gasly's too far back from the Perez-Albon battle, which does seem to be a battle on its own now for third place, he's 35 seconds adrift, Gasly of third place, so that's not going to be a goer. He's 15 seconds off Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz. That's going to be a stretch as well if these tyres are going to go to the end. So I'm not sure it's worked out for Gasly. He may have track position, but taking these tyres to the end, he's going to be very slow if he does, and the McLarens will pit for fresh tyres and gobble him up, I think, in the closing stages.
Lap 31 of 57, sound you can hear is Antonio Giovinazzi, who's up behind Daniel Kvyat in the fight for 13th place. Sebastian Vettel running in 15th still, although the Alfa Romeo of Kimi Raikkonen just had a big lock-up down at turn 1, and that has allowed Vettel to get in front. Bottas is now on the back of Charles Leclerc for 10th position then, and Bottas will try and overtake the Ferrari as they come up towards turn 4. Is he close enough for DRS? No, he's not. On the run, oh yes he is, on the run up to turn 4 this time. Maybe opened it a little late there or something, but maybe the DRS line's further along than I thought. Lap 31 of 57, Bottas is the sound you can hear.
And he's not making progress at this point either. He's behind Leclerc, and they're lapping at a similar pace to Perez. Well, he was half a second quicker on the last lap, but being in traffic is costing him massively. He's not able to clear the cars fast enough, really, to drive a Mercedes car in clear air where they're so quick. We know that, but he's just been bottled up for so much of this race and not able to exploit the pace. And on top of that, when you're behind another car, you lose grip, you slide the tyres more, and you have higher degradation as well.
Bottas right behind Leclerc. Verstappen still with the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. He was 2 tenths quicker than Hamilton on that last lap. He's on the hard tyre, Hamilton on the mediums. 5 seconds the gap between them. It's 17 seconds from second to third to Sergio Perez in that third place. Albon's dropping back from Perez, a couple of tenths of a second a lap. The sound you can hear is Bottas now, coming into the final corner. Back on the power and out onto the start-finish straight. This surely has to be his opportunity to breeze past Charles Leclerc and move back up into the points. Opens the DRS and, easy as you like, moves to the right-hand side, gets up to 203 miles an hour as he gets onto the brakes into turn 1. Leclerc quite good on the brakes, actually. Keeps right with Bottas, but he won't be able to stick with him up to turn 4. So Bottas up into 10th place. The order is Hamilton, Verstappen, Perez, Albon, Norris, the top 5. Sainz, Ricciardo, Ocon, Gasly, Bottas, the top 10.
So some points on the horizon for Bottas. He's got 3 seconds to make up to Pierre Gasly ahead. But I don't think he's going to get anywhere near that battle for third and fourth. Maybe he can get amongst the Renaults and the McLarens by the end of the race, but he's just not had the pace, and he's not been punchy enough in the traffic either, that he's got a long way to go to try and get back to a top 5 finish. The podium fight looks like it's a straight fight between Perez and Albon, and right now Perez is faster, and he's just extended that gap to over 5 seconds. So Perez doing a very good job in the battle for third. The third and fourth gap is pretty much identical to the first and second gap. Hamilton 5 seconds clear of Verstappen, then there's 17 seconds back to Perez, and then another 5 seconds to Albon. So both Red Bulls 5 seconds adrift of the guy ahead that they're trying to overtake in their own personal battle.
Perez was 6 tenths quicker on that last lap. Big lap from Sergio Perez. Jenny?
Yes, just to give you an update, that Kimi Raikkonen's reported that he's got some damage on the car. They think the floor is a problem. He's apparently losing 10 points of downforce.
Not great for Raikkonen. Down in 16th position at the moment. Not too far away from his teammate Giovinazzi, but
good job to keep Bottas at bay for so long then, wasn't it?
Yeah. Hamilton leading. Verstappen second, Perez third, Albon in fourth. And here's a stat from Virtual Statman at the end of lap 31. Lewis Hamilton led his 588th lap of the season, the most he has ever led in any year in his F1 career. And this is only the 15th race of the season. There you go. How's that for a stat? It is a stat. Thanks for Adrian for bringing that to my attention. Lap 34 of 57. I think it shows you what a vintage year of Formula One we've had, doesn't it? As Sergio Perez gets on the brakes. It will be a remembered... I don't need to turn this into a season review just yet, but I was thinking this the other day, in one of the most sort of boring seasons in reality of Formula One, we've had some absolutely outstanding, mind-blowing moments. You know, you think of Stroll getting pole position in the Turkey race. You think of Gasly winning in Monza. To be honest, you think of Romain Grosjean's crash today. There's a lot of things in 2020 that will sort of be looked back on as incredible. Hamilton finishing a race with 3 tyres at Silverstone. It's been like a terrible season, but the highlights have been really quite highlighty, more highlights than we've seen in the last 5 years.
Yeah, there's been plenty of drama amidst pretty much the same old story of Hamilton and Mercedes dominance, but it has been punctuated by surprising moments and memorable moments, really. This one, after the races got going, is not one of the better Grand Prix. Bottas not able to really offer anything coming through the field right now, still behind Pierre Gasly now by 2 seconds. Verstappen's just not got the pace of Hamilton. How many times has that been the case this year, where he's behind, but actually the Mercedes just steadily drives away in a painstakingly small increments fashion, really, just a tenth or so each lap, and now in comes Max Verstappen from second place.
Okay, that 35 of 57, and it is going to be a set of hards again for Max Verstappen's slow pit stop. Big slow pit stop for sort of seemingly no reason. It didn't look as though anyone was still working on the tyres there.
There was no green light at the top, so the front jackman did the job and held him, but I couldn't see exactly why. In comes Albon as well. It was a good job that pit stop wasn't any slower, because Red Bull double stacking.
And Albon going on to a new set of hards as well, with a little over 20 laps to go in this Grand Prix. Albon's going to come out behind the 2 McLarens. Is he going to come out behind the 2 Renaults? I think he'll just come out ahead of them, although the second one pits, actually. Esteban Ocon, having done more laps on those tyres than have been in the Grand Prix so far, does now come in off to switch off the mediums. But yeah, that's a shame for Verstappen. It's an interesting decision, considering he was on the hards, to go on to some more hards at the end of this one.
I think the mediums won't get it to the end of the race easily. There's still 22 more laps, and we saw the degradation early on. The drivers were pitting after about 13 laps on the mediums. With less fuel on the car, it should be a little bit easier to get these tyres to the end, but it's the hards is the only one that's going to get to the end right now in a more comfortable fashion. Here comes Hamilton.
So Lewis Hamilton into the pits. Will it be a neat and tidy stop for the Mercedes team? Off go the medium tyres, on go the hard tyres, away he goes. And that's the end of the Grand Prix for Lewis Hamilton, pretty much, as he rejoins the circuit. Nice clean stop out on the hard tyre, and he's going to come out still just in front of Sergio Perez. So they had the pit stop window there to get the Mercedes out in front of the racing point. Not that it would have been too much of a drama if he came out behind. But his gap now over Verstappen is going to be about 6 seconds then, Lewis Hamilton. And Verstappen then into third position. Like I say, they couldn't really see what was wrong at his pit stop. It would normally, it's quite obvious that someone's still trying to put a tyre on somewhere or still doing something or other around the car, but not on this occasion. So Hamilton leading, Perez second, but has to stop again. Verstappen in third position in the Red Bull. Norris and Sainz in fourth and fifth ahead of Albon, but Albon has made his second stop. Ricciardo in seventh, Gasly eighth, Bottas ninth, Leclerc 10th, Russell 11th, Ocon 12th, Giovinazzi, Vettel, Raikkonen in the top 15, Latifi, Kvyat, Magnussen the top 18.
Verstappen did have a slow stop, then he put in the fastest second and third sector of the Grand Prix, which is why the damage wasn't really more than just over a second to Lewis Hamilton. But Hamilton now is, in terms of strategy, that's checkmate for Hamilton ahead of Verstappen, but he's got the pace anyway. There's little hope now for Verstappen to get back into this in a pure fight. You never know what can happen, a late safety car or any other issues for the Mercedes, and he needs to be there to try and pounce. But as usual, the Mercedes is quick, Hamilton's quick, he's not making mistakes, and he's just pulling clear of Verstappen. He's got Sergio Perez to pass as well. Perez has stayed out. They've not tried to cover off Albon until now. Perez dives into the pits as I say that.
Okay, so let's see what happens with regards to Perez and Alex Albon. Max Verstappen sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. He's only 3.7 seconds back from Hamilton after that last couple of laps. So without that slow pit stop, he would have been a little closer, maybe not quite close enough to do the job. Very neat stop there from Racing Point. 2.7 seconds. Looked pretty swift as they dropped him down. The wheels were already spinning. Perez is going to come out behind the two McLarens, who still you would think have to stop again, and he is in front of Alex Albon then. So Perez emerges in 5th, Albon in 6th, but those two McLarens, Jenny, still in front.
Yeah, just listening across the radio, actually, it seems like Sainz isn't particularly happy with the pace of Norris. He wants to have a go at it. Norris has been told to pick up his pace. They're both on the medium tyres, but Sainz really wants this. What will the team do?
He's 3.7 seconds back, isn't he? So he's not exactly close to the back of Norris. They're not really in a fight with the Renaults. Ricciardo has just pitted after Ocon pitted a few moments ago. So they're not really also in a fight with the Racing Point, you wouldn't have thought. And the Renaults are side by side, Ocon and Ricciardo coming out of turn 1 as Daniel Ricciardo has just left the pits. Ocon's basically managed to undercut his teammate here. Are they fighting for position? Looks like it to me.
Very hard. Ocon sweeps to the inside to defend at turn 4. Ricciardo might get a switch back and go for the inside at 6, but that's always a brave move. Ocon goes a little bit wide of the apex, but still has the momentum to stay ahead. So Ricciardo was frustrated they were racing in the first place, but they're racing again now because they've been pitted and perfectly emerged into turn 1 together after Ricciardo takes his pit stop 2 laps later than Ocon, who's nicely managed to undercut him.
Lap 38 of 57. Ricciardo might have another go down into turn 8. He's got the DRS. Ocon's checking the mirrors. Ricciardo nosing to the inside, but knows that it's pretty important they don't wipe each other out, especially in this stage of the season. Sergio Perez has got ahead of Carlos Sainz now up into 4th position, but those McLarens still, you would think, have to do another pit stop. Gary Anderson, formerly of this parish, has done a tweet saying, and I don't really have a huge expertise on this, but he does, a former F1 designer of Jordan and Stewart and Jaguar. He says it was the chassis structure around the fuel tank that failed, leaving the fuel tank exposed. The component lying on the floor at the rear of the chassis is the battery pack. So that's what Gary Anderson sort of surmises from his view on that Romain Grosjean accident earlier on, that the structure around the fuel tank failed, and that's what meant that the fuel was there and the fire began. Now, Ricciardo and Ocon fighting again over 10th position. Ricciardo might get this one done. Coming up into turn 4, he does. The Australian round the outside of his French teammate up at the 4th corner on the circuit, and he's up into 10th position, although he still has some pit stoppers in front to gain some more places. Lap 39 of 57.
So the Renaults now are going to be hoping that Leclerc pits sometime soon and gets out of their way. And then it's Valtteri Bottas, who's still stuck behind Gasly. He's not made any inroads, Bottas, since that pit stop. He's closed up a couple of seconds to Gasly in the last 5 or 10 laps. But now he's still stuck behind the Frenchman in the AlphaTauri, so he's losing more time there. Where will Bottas emerge? Will he pit again? Almost certainly. Then he's going to be on the attack to try and hunt down the likes of the Renaults and possibly a McLaren, but they're going to be too far ahead, I think.
Albon's just got ahead of Sainz and Norris has just pitted, so that means the gap between Albon and Perez is only 2.5 seconds. Oof, Sainz is fighting back here, went to the outside coming into turn 4. Bottas has pitted again, meanwhile, onto the medium tyre. Sainz got run off the road a little bit on the exit of turn 4, but he was never going to be able to hold that place for very long against the Red Bull. But Albon then 2.8 seconds back from Sergio Perez, so that pit stop phase has him a little closer than he was to Perez prior.
Both Red Bulls a little closer. Verstappen's still just 3.5 seconds away from Hamilton, even though he had a very slow pit stop. And as you say, Albon now within 3 seconds of Perez, but he did pit a couple of laps earlier as well. So Perez has had better pace through the race, ever so slightly, and has fresher tyres, and exactly the same is true of the Mercedes ahead of Verstappen for the race lead as well.
So Hamilton leading the Grand Prix, 3.6 seconds ahead of Verstappen in 2nd position. Then it's 24 seconds back to Sergio Perez in 3rd position. Lando Norris has pitted, so it's Albon in 4th place, 2.8 seconds back from Sergio Perez. Sainz in 5th, Gasly 6th, Norris 7th, Leclerc 8th, Ricciardo 9th, Ocon 10th. Then Bottas, Russell, Giovinazzi, Vettel, Raikkonen in the top 15. Into the pits now comes Carlos Sainz. This is my issue, right, with two-stop races and people thinking, oh, more pit stops means better races. And there's been something going on the whole time in this Grand Prix, right? Where there's always been, oh, when are they going to pit again? When are they going to pit again? When are they going to pit again? It doesn't make it any good. Like, it means that we have a bit more interest, admittedly. There's sort of something to talk about, but it means you get more sort of overtaking in the pit lane and with strategy, and then, I don't know, you know what I mean? It's not like a silver bullet to just have more pit stops, because it's just a bit more complicated. Something always happening, but same old.
Slow pit stop for Sainz, so he's going to have to pass Charles Leclerc on track. I think there's just, it's not a silver bullet at all, but what you want is a variance. That's Sainz reacting to his slow pit stop, I think. That's left him behind Charles Leclerc in 8th place. Leclerc is 7th. What you want is someone to go on a one stop, someone to go on a two, and you want it to be quite close to the end of the race. So you've got a difference in pace and an interesting element there. If you have 2 pit stops instead of 1, but everyone does the same thing, then there is no greater interest, really. But it's when people do something different and it works for some and not for others, or the other way around, that's when things do get a bit more exciting. Maybe not in this race, because mostly everyone's going to be looking to do a 2-stop.
Sainz has a slow pit stop, as you alluded to. That brought him out behind Charles Leclerc. He's got back ahead of Charles Leclerc now, but he is 9.5 seconds behind his teammate Lando Norris. So you would have thought 5th and 6th are in the books as Leclerc loses that position, Jenny.
Yeah, Leclerc really struggling on the radio. The team was saying, can you give us a bit more? And he was saying, giving it all I've got here. There's just no pace in the car. So frustrating times for Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. And just to add on to that, Jean Todt has been on social media after that crash from Romain Grosjean. Seems like years ago. He said, so relieved that Grosjean is safe. Thanks to Dr. Ian Roberts and the FIA teams for their courageous and efficient intervention. We have always put safety at the top of our priorities and will continue to do so.
Okay, thank you for that. Lap 41 of 57. Albon, is he having a good race, or is he having a terrible race?
He's having an okay race. He's having an Albon race, really. I don't think, for me, this is not enough to justify staying with the team. Being beaten by Sergio Perez, I think he's got to be beating Perez. 3 seconds away, he's just slowly dropping back, 2/10 on the last lap, and Perez is going quicker again on this lap. He's 30 seconds adrift of his teammate, and he's not really been held up by Perez either. In fact, Perez has been marginally the faster of the two all race long. But this is kind of where he is. He's not having a bad race, he's not having a good race, he's just having an Albon level race, really, that is upper midfield. And when Bottas is out of the race, can be a podium, but Perez is going to sneak him to it. And I think Perez, once again, is having a very solid drive, looking after the tyres, and ultimately faster than Albon.
Lap 42 of 57. Hamilton's lead, only 3.2 seconds over Verstappen. Verstappen took half a second out of Hamilton over the last lap, but I don't think it's worth believing that Hamilton is going absolutely full tilt at the moment. Valtteri Bottas is, though, he's got back up into 10th position. Sorry, I just chuckled at a tweet that I don't know if I can read out or not. I think I can, because it's an opinion of a listener. Todd Corporate Waffle is the opinion of the listener Nulla. So there we go. 15 laps to go in the Grand Prix. The sound you can hear is Bottas then trying to pass Ocon. He'll then have 3.5 seconds to Ricciardo. He'll then have 3.5 seconds to Sainz, then 10 seconds to Norris. And Bottas on that last lap was 0.6 of a second faster than Esteban Ocon. So a couple of places potentially on the cards here for Bottas, and that will be helped by Ocon having a big lockup down at turn 10.
Where can he get back to? He's not made a lot of overtakes. That's the problem for Bottas. He's got to pass Ocon quickly if he wants to try and catch Carlos Sainz. But Sainz has also just pitted. The Renaults aren't exactly on very old tyres, so it's just a Mercedes coming through the pack. And to be honest, his career, he's not known as he's a very fast driver, Bottas, but he's not known as a great overtaker. And in Monza, he was stuck with the midfielders as well. He couldn't make any progress after a poor start. Now, if he wants to salvage some points, he's made all his pit stops, but maybe only Pierre Gasly is the only driver ahead to pit. He's going to have to do it on track, and he's got DRS on Ocon here. Down the start-finish straight into turn 1. Bottas looks to the inside and sends it, goes through on the Renault driver. Ocon gets the cutback though. Might be able to get the run up towards turn 4. He'll have DRS here. Oh no, Bottas has got the DRS. Ocon coming up towards turn 4, goes to the inside. Can't quite get it done. So Bottas then was good, very good. Clinical from Bottas, late on the brakes, gave Ocon no choice to recover really. Sent up the inside, covered into turn 4 well enough. So that's a really good job done for Bottas. 4.5 seconds now to catch Daniel Ricciardo, who might be a little bit harder to pass than Ocon. He's always racy, and he's a bit quicker than the Frenchman as well today. So let's see how quickly Bottas in the Mercedes can catch the second Renault. But that was a really nice move there. Vettel has got past Kevin Magnussen and is up into 15th position. So Hamilton leading, and he's now stretched his legs a little over Verstappen, 4 seconds behind. And then it is Perez in 3rd, Albon in 4th, 3.5 seconds further back. Gasly in 5th, Norris, Sainz, Ricciardo, Bottas and Ocon the top 10, with Leclerc still running outside of the points in 11th position. 12th is Antonio Giovinazzi, 13th Daniel Kvyat. Well, Lewis Hamilton is cruising away at the front of this one. He's 4 seconds clear of Max Verstappen in a very delayed and a race full of stoppages after a very big crash for Romain Grosjean earlier on. He's okay. Hamilton leading the way, and we've only got about 13 laps to go. Hamilton 4.1 seconds ahead of Verstappen now, so he's looking fairly comfortable. Gasly in 6th position then has just been passed by Lando Norris. So Norris in the McLaren up into 5th, Gasly in 6th. He's only done 18 laps on those hards, so he's going to want to be going to the end. How far can he stay up the order is going to be the question here, really, in the closing stages. Well, he was just ahead of Bottas when Bottas pitted, so I think he's going to fall back towards the Mercedes driver again, which will be down in 8th and 9th. Ricciardo 8th currently and Bottas in 9th. He's lapping only about a second and a half slower than Bottas, so it's not too bad considering he's on 18-lap old hards. Let's get news on Lewis Hamilton from Jenny.
Yeah, Pete Bonington has been on the radio to him to give him some information about where he's losing out to Verstappen, and they say apart from management, it's the initial braking into turns 8 and 9.
Okay. So apart from management probably means, apart from the fact that you're intentionally driving really slowly and just holding the lead easily. 8 and 9. 8 and 9.
8 and 10 it must be.
Yeah, it must be.
It's the slow speed. The right-hand hairpin of turn 8 where Lance Stroll was flipped upside down, and then the tricky braking zone of turn 10, the left-hander, easy to lock up, and you don't want to be doing that when the tyres are frail and you want to be going to the end of the race. But low speed then that he's losing out. And George Russell.
Yeah, he's been on the radio. He's got no regen at the moment, saying the battery pack's just empty, and Vettel's climbing all over the back of him.
They're just coming down the start-finish straight, so regen, meaning he's not getting energy back into the battery, presumably from under braking.
He's doing okay now. He's Vettel not really catching him down the main straight. So if you deploy too much energy in a fight, then you're the bottom of the battery pack, and you need to regenerate your the energy. And basically Russell frustrated. It's always when you want to deploy energy and you've not got enough in the battery, then it's always a frustration for the drivers, and it's a relatively common radio message, particularly when you see Ferrari fast approaching to try and pass you. But Russell looked okay on that main straight, wasn't having to harvest too much energy at the end of the straight.
Hamilton leading the Grand Prix, 4.5 seconds clear of Max Verstappen. Pulled another 5 seconds out on that last lap, did the Mercedes driver. Then it's 26 seconds back to Sergio Perez in third position. 4.5 to Albon in fourth, who's not making much progress and says on the radio that the rears are gone. He is then 18 seconds ahead of Lando Norris, who is 3 seconds ahead of Pierre Gasly, who's 5.7 seconds ahead of Carlos Sainz. So Sainz actually is almost 2 seconds a lap quicker than Gasly in that fight over sixth position. Albon, now this is for Albon to, it's for Verstappen to pit again then. So Max Verstappen pits again. He's going to go onto the medium tyres for the last 11 laps of the Grand Prix.
Nothing to lose. He's got a free pit stop back to Sergio Perez, so long as it's quick, which it is this time for Verstappen. 2.3 seconds in the box, and he'll rejoin in second and go and have a charge at Lewis Hamilton. Probably he won't get there, but Hamilton also has the option to cover him off now as well. He's got to take an awful lot of time out in 10 laps. Nearly 3 seconds a lap he's going to have to go, and he's just emerged into a load of traffic as well. But Red Bull with nothing to lose once again, rolling the dice and seeing what comes out.
Hamilton leading then, and his advantage is 27 seconds over Hamilton. So, I mean, with 10 laps to go, you've got to be doing almost 3 seconds a lap, haven't you, to advantage over Hamilton, to make Hamilton think about maybe pitting. So, it's going to need a lot. But
they can pit Hamilton now, Mercedes, and just completely make that null and void, really, that pit stop from Red Bull. So they got the option to cover Verstappen off, or they can leave him out there, and probably Verstappen won't be fast enough to put 3 seconds a lap for the next 10 laps. And he's come out in traffic with lapping Kimi Räikkönen and Nicholas Latifi. He's not exactly done a fast outlap either, so I don't think it will really frighten Mercedes too much right now, but it's just a bit of a Hail Mary. Give something else a go, because what they had wasn't working. He was just dropping back again from Hamilton. He was over 5 seconds away when he pitted and losing the tyres, as Albon is as well behind Perez. Albon now 5.5 seconds behind Perez.
Daniel Kvyat passes Antonio Giovinazzi. Oh, Giovinazzi locks up, nearly runs into the back of Kvyat, but that is 12th place now for the Russian. 10 laps to go, Jenny Gal.
Yeah, and Gasly's been on the radio. It's actually a really nice fight for 5th place, potentially, between Norris, Gasly and Sainz. So Gasly's on these old tyres. Sainz is apparently having problems with his brakes as well at the moment. So there's a real opportunity here. They're going to try and get Gasly to the end without pitting him again. And they're all trying to get 5th from Norris.
Yeah, Norris then 5 seconds ahead of Gasly, 3 seconds ahead of Sainz. So with Sainz still as 1.6 seconds quicker on that last lap, and he's 3 seconds behind. So Sainz will catch Gasly. Bottas is 4 seconds back from Ricciardo and only closing in at 0.4 of a second a lap. So I don't think Bottas is going to catch Ricciardo here.
No, I think Norris looks pretty safe in 5th, to be honest. He's passed Gasly and is clearing away from the Frenchman. Sainz is catching Gasly, and even though he's maybe struggling with his brakes, he's up 1.3 seconds quicker on the last lap, and he's only a couple of seconds behind now. So Sainz can pass Gasly in the next couple of laps, which will put McLaren back to 5th and 6th. Then what can Ricciardo and Bottas do?
Gasly 2.8, let's go and get him.
Yeah, Gasly will be easy.
Yeah, he reckons it'll be about as easy as I think it'll be for Carlos Sainz. It's not going to be any problem because he's on old hard tyres and Sainz knows it. Big talk.
Lap 49 of 57. Have you had that in your career where an engineer's like, come on, you know, trying to really G you up, and you're like, yeah, no, easy?
I wouldn't have said it was easy, that's for sure. I wouldn't have come back on the radio and said easy, because you never know what's going to happen. And you can. I never like to tempt fate like that.
You'd always be like, oh guys, yeah, I'll do my best, but
yeah.
God,
this will be magic if I pull it off. Yeah, no, I normally would just stay quiet. I've had it the other way around, where there's been about 5 laps to go and the engineer comes on and he says, okay, the next car ahead of you is Grosjean. He's 18 seconds ahead. I'm like, well, that's impossible. Don't tell me this. I'm not catching him. So it works both ways sometimes.
Lap 49 of 57 in the Bahrain Grand Prix. Thank you very much for sticking with us, if you're still with us on #BBC F1. I know you didn't sign up for a 3-hour-long broadcast, but here we are. Nor did we. So there we go. But Hamilton is leading the Grand Prix, 25 seconds clear of Verstappen. Verstappen sets the fastest lap of the race. on a 32.0, but he's still 7 seconds ahead of Perez. Albon dropping back and back from Perez. Norris in 5th position, and Sainz is now just 1.2 seconds behind Pierre Gasly, so this is going to be pretty straightforward for the Spaniard. Bottas isn't closing in on right now. What are Ricciardo's that time? 33.8. So Ricciardo's going a second a lap quicker than Gasly. He's about 6th out. I think this might be the last change of position we get in the Grand Prix, you know. I think Sainz gets Gasly, and then I don't think Ricciardo's going to have enough time. Bottas doesn't really have enough pace. These are the moments, or the days, or the times where with Bottas's car, I know he's got the sort of tyre offset and stuff like that, but you'd still think he'd be making more progress than this.
Are you falling asleep? Wake up, wake up.
Yeah, check away here.
So Perez asking if the team are falling asleep. I guess it is 8 o'clock at night now in Bahrain.
Yeah, getting tired. Perez is G'd up. He still wants this podium. This has been 2 and 2 for Sergio Perez, running in 3rd, 6 seconds clear of Albon. Gasly's doing a good job. He just set his personal best lap of the race, so whilst he's not super quick, he's still ticking along okay, and he's 1 second slower than Daniel Ricciardo. Is just about enough for Ricciardo to get close, particularly if Gasly has a bit of a ding-dong with Carlos Sainz, which could happen very shortly because Sainz is within a second and has DRS on Gasly. That could be tight by the end of the race. This is the sort of 2-stop, 1-stop thriller you want, Jack. You live for these. Gasly in 7th trying to hold off Ricciardo. I wonder if Bottas has got an underlying car issue today, because he's not been at the races at all. From the moment he couldn't pass Kimi Raikkonen, to being stuck behind Pierre Gasly for much of the race, to now actually doing a nice move on Ocon, but having no better pace than Daniel Ricciardo. And in fact, he's arguably even slightly slower than Ricciardo, and they're on Bottas on the medium tyre, Ricciardo on the hard tyre, but similar tyre life right now.
Lap 51 of 57 as we come to a vintage closing stages in this battle for 6th position. Up through the uphill right-hander of 13. And it looks as though Romain Grosjean's going to win driver of the day. According to the stats, the official Formula 1 driver of the day is Romain Grosjean.
Did 3 corners and then caused a collision. But that's not the story.
Yeah, exactly. It's easy to be flippant about it, and it's very funny to be flippant about it, but we probably shouldn't be. We'll see if he gets a 3-place grid drop for the next race for causing a collision. Here comes Sainz then. To the outside of the AlphaTauri of Pierre Gasly. They're battling over 6th position. Lap 51 of 57, and it's done. So Sainz gets up, so much traction, so much drive, has the DRS, and he is ahead coming in towards turn 4. A round of applause from the McLaren gang, and Norris then in 5th, Sainz in 6th position. They're on for a good haul of points here in the Constructors' Championship fight. Perez obviously is picking up a load of points as well, but it's keeping McLaren in the hunt a little bit.
Yeah, 2 cars v 1 car, basically. Stroll not in the race, and both McLarens ticking along very nicely. It was a good move from Sainz, but Gasly just didn't have the rear grip, and it was as easy as he said it would be, really, for Sainz. Gasly got a little bit out of shape in towards turn 2 with no rear grip now on those old hards, and Sainz just drove around with the DRS. So nice move up into 6th place, and that's probably it for Carlos Sainz now. 5th and 6th. Job done for them, and with that they'll actually gain 3 points to Racing Point, even though Perez looks like he's going to finish on the podium.
Ricciardo will move into 5th in the championship standings, but he will be 15 points adrift now of Sergio Perez. So save for a shocking last 2 races for Perez, he's looking good for that 4th in the championship standings. Ricciardo's 2.7 seconds back now from Pierre Gasly, and he was over 2 seconds a lap quicker on that last lap. It doesn't really count because Gasly was getting overtaken, but Ricciardo has got a little bit of a shot at this.
Yeah, Gasly's struggling on the hards, and that was very clear when Sainz came through, and now Ricciardo will smell a chance to pick up another couple of points in that battle with Perez for the drivers. Will help Renault out as well. They're looking to score points with both cars, but it's only minor points right now. 8th for Ricciardo. Ocon still hanging on in 10th is not really good enough for the team, but for Ricciardo, he wants to beat Perez in that battle for 4th in the drivers. He's got to clear Pierre Gasly, And with 5 laps to go, he's a couple of seconds back. I think he might have this quite easily before the end as well. It's going to be Gasly v Bottas. That's going to be the thrill for 8th place, I think, in maybe the final lap.
Jenny Gow, still here?
Oh, yeah.
Cactus Jack is still here, by the way. Cactus Jack said, I'm still here, and it doesn't feel like 3 hours. So there we go.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. And I tell you what, coming into this race, McLaren said this was damage limitation for them. I think they've achieved it. They started this race, remember, 9th and 15th after a brake failure for Sainz yesterday. So collecting double points in 5th and 6th is, a real whammy for them. And just a really nice note here. Julien Favreau, who's a French journalist, has received a message from Jules Bianchi's mum, and it says, they introduced the halo following my son's accident, and the halo saved Roman's life today. This is great. I'm glad that he's okay.
Yeah, absolutely true, to be honest with you. Lap 53 of 57. Here's Gasly's radio.
I'm losing the traction.
We have 5 more laps. Can you make it? 5 more laps.
Yeah, I can make it, but I don't know how fast.
Yeah, I can make it, but in what position is the question?
Yeah, Ricciardo quickly bearing down within a second and a half now on Gasly. I don't think he's going to be holding on to 7th, but can he hold on ahead of Bottas, who's dropping back from Daniel Ricciardo? Here's Gasly again.
Give me all the power.
Give me all the power, requests Gasly. 1.4 seconds ahead of Ricciardo at the moment. And then Bottas 4.3 seconds further back. We're on lap 54 of 57 in the closing stages of the Bahrain Grand Prix. And the sparks flying from underneath Ricciardo's car as he comes through the downhill left-handers of turns 9 and 10, and then on the power onto the back straight. Hamilton leading 19 seconds clear of Verstappen, who is 20 seconds clear of Sergio Perez. So 40 seconds separating the top 3 cars. Giovinazzi's just got ahead of someone here. George Russell is there in 13th place, and then Giovinazzi in 14th position. And Sergio Perez is getting passed by Latifi. Something going on here with Perez's car. Puff of smoke from the rear. Is the Racing Point going to fall into trouble here?
Oh dear, there's more smoke for Perez. No, he's not going to finish the race.
The Mercedes in the back of the Racing Point is going boom. Perez, after a superb drive, is looking like he's in big trouble. And there it goes. Bam, huge plume of white smoke from the back of that Racing Point. He's not getting to the end of this Grand Prix, surely. He's got reasonable pace at the moment. Albon is going to get a podium here. He'll pass Perez whatever happens, although he's sort of sliding around, presumably on Perez's oil. But the huge plumes of white smoke at the back, and that is bad news for Perez's championship. Flames now coming from the rear of the Racing Point. He wants to keep driving as much as possible, but it's done now. Pulls over to the side of the road. We might even end this race behind the safety car because flames are licking up from the rear of Perez's machine. He'll want to get out of that one pronto, and that means Albon is up to 3rd. Safety car deployed. 4th for Norris, and that is a big saving grace for Pierre Gasly.
Yep. What a shame for Sergio Perez. He'd driven a brilliant race to be in 3rd place, had it absolutely job done, and the car gives up on him just a few laps from the end, and there's a safety car. I wonder how quickly he's pulled it off at the support pit side on the run from turn 10 to 11. I wonder how quickly that will clear, whether we might get a racing lap. It's very unlikely, but no one needs to go to sleep just yet if you're the strategist for Hamilton or Verstappen.
Yeah, it's an interesting. Do you pit now to sort of make sure, I suppose, or do you stay out there? It went for Perez coming out onto the back straight, and it was quite immediately clear that that was his race done. So that means that I can't see us getting a racing lap, to be honest, because of the safety. If it was the virtual safety car, then fair enough. And I don't think there's a huge amount of access points on the straight down there on the left-hand side as we look at it.
No, there's a drag strip before the support race garages, and I think you're probably right, but you never know. What a shame for Perez, for Racing Point out of 3rd place. He drove the car to oblivion. He did not want to stop. He kept his foot in for half a lap when there was smoke pouring out the back until it was a full-on fire and the engine cut. Desperation. But it means Alex Albon is going to collect a podium.
Looks that way, doesn't it? So Albon into 3rd place. Mercedes are ready then. They might just pit Hamilton for... Well, no, he's staying out then, Hamilton. As he comes across the line then, he stays out. They're obviously fairly confident that there won't be a racing lap. I'm fairly confident as well, but you just wonder if they'll chuck a Verstappen in there so that he's on a softer tyre just in case.
Okay, Lou, so we're going to stay out. We think this is going to take a long time to clear.
Sure.
There'll be 2 to go when you cross the line. So they still have to let lapped cars through. And there's no overtaking on the last lap.
We've got the gap, we should overtake it now. We've got...
No, the gap is now marginal. The gap is marginal. So not going to take the risk.
Okay, so that's the reasoning, is that kind of like Melbourne 2017 or 18, it was, if they pitted Hamilton now and they had a bit of a sticky wheel or something, they could lose the win for sort of no reason. They're pushing Perez's car back. There's a sort of access point on I don't think there is an access point on the left there, you know.
But they've got to... Pete Bonington's absolutely right on the radio to Hamilton. They've got to then let cars through. The cars aren't even bunched up, and we're about to head on to the last lap. So no need to take the risk. The race will finish behind the safety car. Hamilton ahead of Verstappen and Albon. And that shake-up for 4th in the drivers or 3rd in the constructors has just taken a huge turn with that. Yeah. Racing Point losing 15 points. McLaren now gaining 22. With what would have been 5th and 6th is now 4th and 5th, and their main rival for it has just lost 15 of their own points.
Yeah, well, I said, didn't I, that in case something goes drastically wrong for Perez in the last 2 races, he was looking fairly secure for it, but now it's happening for in the third from last race is where it's gone wrong for Sergio Perez. Real shame. 0 points today for Racing Point, and that's a lot of money going up in flames, basically, potentially. Jenny.
Yeah, I just had a look in the garage at Racing Point, and the whole team are heartbroken. The owner, Lawrence Stroll, is here this weekend. Remember, he had COVID earlier on this year, but he's at the paddock, and you are talking about millions.
There's a guy running across the track. It's the bravest guy I've ever seen.
Oh,
brave or stupid?
It just feels like there was a fire marshal running across the circuit, basically, as Norris came down the back straight. I don't know, but I just feel like there's a lot of this weird stuff going on in F1 at the moment with things like that. When you think of the Imola, or you think of this now, or you think of Grosjean going through a barrier, or you think of the race being restarted, or the qualifying being restarted with people on the track in Turkey, all a bit peculiar and unsettling at the moment, but the man got across the track and no problem at all in the end for he or Lando Norris. But Hamilton is leading the Grand Prix then on the final lap behind the safety car. It's done. Heading, I think it's Otmar Safnauer who's sitting on the pit wall with his head in his hands. Nothing Racing Point could do as well. It's almost, it's a Mercedes engine in the back of that car. It looked like it may well be an internal combustion engine failure. I have to wait and see, but it sort of had all the hallmarks of a classic engine let go. So nothing they could have done, nothing Perez could have done.
No, very, very smoky, which is going to be the internal combustion engine. And gutting, absolutely gutting. And for those teams that getting a podium is just so tricky when you've got the obvious big 3, Hamilton, Bottas and Verstappen. Here's Bottas.
Possible rear right puncture.
So Bottas has been told he's got a possible rear right puncture again, so he's found more debris.
He's glued to debris, isn't he?
He should be able to make it around the last lap, though, I'd have thought.
Yeah, he's just got to go slowly now. He's on the final lap. He'll finish in 8th place then. And yeah, when Bottas is out of position, or Verstappen or Hamilton, it is a brilliant chance for some of the usual midfield teams to have their day on the podium. It's not going to be a midfield team to be on the podium, but it is going to be Alex Albon who will be there to pick up his second podium of his career.
So Hamilton coming down towards the final corner, behind the safety car. Lights are out on the safety car. It will pull in, but it will be Hamilton that is going to take the victory. through the final turn. It's yet another win for Lewis Hamilton. The checkered flag falls, and after an incredibly eventful Bahrain Grand Prix, it's a very uneventful outcome. Lewis Hamilton wins again. Another victory. 2 races to go. Hamilton, the 7-time world champion, is just non-stop. Verstappen across the line in second. Albon takes a podium in third place. Norris and Sainz in fourth and fifth. Big day for McLaren. That could be really, really good news for their championship challenge. Gasly manages to hold on to sixth place. Ricciardo seventh. Bottas eighth. Ninth for Ocon. 10th for Leclerc. Kvyat, Russell, Vettel, Latifi, Raikkonen, Giovinazzi and Magnussen, the 17 finishers. 3 retirements, 2 of them the Racing Points, Perez and Stroll, and of course Romain Grosjean on the opening lap of the Grand Prix. But it was in the end the straightforward race that we imagined it may be for Hamilton.
Yeah, never really in doubt, was it? Verstappen kept him honest, was around 5 seconds behind for most of the race. Hamilton couldn't really let his foot off the gas, but that was relatively routine for Lewis, never under any more pressure than that. And Mercedes just covered all bases, really. Another win, such a dominant year, and even though he's won the title already, it just keeps this relentless pressure up. I think happiest today is going to be McLaren.
That was a tough race, guys. Great job. It wasn't as easy as you think.
No, mate, we're with you. We could see it was a tricky one to keep on top of. But yeah, beautiful job looking after those rubber.
It was an interesting one, that, because we didn't really see much evidence of it, to be perfectly honest with you. We didn't really see any evidence of Hamilton being properly under pressure or properly struggling. We didn't hear any Bono, my tyres are dead.
No, it looked routine. It looked routine for Hamilton, the great driver that he is, to soak up pressure from Verstappen, who couldn't really ever get close enough after the start. That was it. He looked like he had a good restart, but couldn't quite follow through the final corner. That was his only moment.
Well done, Max. You did what you could, mate.
Yeah, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah, well done, mate. You dragged every bit of performance out of that. They were just that bit quicker than us today, but very, very good drive.
Yeah, it was a good podium again after 2 races where it didn't go to plan. So also congrats to Alex on P3.
Yeah, I don't really have much to say about the results there. The fireworks are going off as Hamilton pulls into P1. A Red Bull second and third on the podium. Verstappen pulls into the second place slot at the end of the pit lane, or at the start of the pit lane, I should say. And Alex Albon will pull into third position, his second podium of the season in that Red Bull. But he did finish behind the Racing Point. The result there will flatter Albon a little bit, but he was still there in fourth position nevertheless.
The result flatters him a lot, to be honest. He was in a straight fight with Perez and he was losing it, but Perez didn't finish the race with his engine going at the death. So Albon takes a podium with Bottas out of the race as well. In a normal fight he'd be fifth, which would be okay. It would still be a solid enough. Is it solid enough to retain his Red Bull drive? It's a shame for him that the man that was beating him in the race is the man that wants his drive. Twice in a row we've had straight fights between Perez and Albon, and really Perez has come out on top, but it is Albon that will stand on the podium today.
I have a feeling this is the first Red Bull double podium since Japan 17, if my stats are right. That's a long time. Joleon's now thinking,
what happened in Japan 17?
Thinking,
Red Bull got on the podium with both cars.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to remember. Well, actually, that was your last race, Palmer, wasn't it?
Yeah, I finished 12th. From the back of the grid. I'm surprised that they didn't get a double podium with Verstappen and Ricciardo in 2018, but maybe they didn't. Verstappen had a bit of an error-strewn start to the year.
And you had Ferrari being strong.
Ferrari was stronger. Yeah, it was Vettel v Hamilton, wasn't it? So, yeah, good for the team then.
Good work for the Red Bull squad. Alex Albon pulls off his balaclava. Big smile from him. Lewis Hamilton takes the victory and walks over to Well, I thought he was going to walk over to congratulate his team, but he basically did a massive circle there, and he's walking back the other way. So he goes to stand on the scales, does Hamilton.
5.5, thank you very much.
Oh, I didn't hear. What was that? 85.5? Would that have been with kit? Didn't quite
Must
hear.
have been 75.5.
75.5. That makes a bit more sense, doesn't it? Fist bump between Hamilton and Verstappen.
Even that's quite heavy.
Well, 75.5
Maybe it was
with kit.
65.5. Must have been 65.5.
Hey, with kit?
Yeah,
what were you?
I used to be about 72, and I'm tall.
Well, yeah, but seeing the amount of chicken nuggets you eat, not surprising you're going to be a bit heavier.
Yes, that's my point. Hamilton's going to be lighter than me, and I'm at 72.
Hamilton's not getting a Big Mac meal and then 20 chicken nuggets on the side.
No, who's doing that? That's crazy.
Horror show from Palmer. Hamilton just having a little chat with his mechanics and engineers. Not quite the sort of elation of the win as in Turkey 2 weeks ago. A far more straightforward job for Hamilton this time around. We'll be hearing from him in a couple of moments' time, as we will from all of the top three. Ricciardo and Verstappen having a little chat. And we will now hear from the top three. We'll be starting with Alex Albon. Paul de Resta is down in Parc Fermé to speak to the drivers.
Alex, I can see your smile, obviously behind the mask. It's been a tough weekend after that crash in FP2, but these guys standing behind me, you can see they're getting behind you, and second podium in Formula 1.
Yeah, it was obviously a bit of luck involved with Sergio. Obviously, he had a really good race. But considering Friday, the guys did an amazing job to get the car ready. And, it just feels good. It feels good, obviously, a double podium for us. And, yeah, I'm happy.
What's the plan for the next 3 days? Obviously, you've got some time to reset. We're back here on a different track. But at the moment, I guess that's a confidence boost, and that lifts you.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like the last few races have been just getting better and better. Just results haven't really been showing. So, yeah, it's a step forward again. And we spent 3 days doing whatever, hanging by the swimming pool, playing some golf. But yeah, all good.
Excellent. Nice to see you on the podium. Nice to see you smiling after that. Max, a pretty solid day at the office. Firstly, I want to touch on what happened at the start. Obviously, not nice scenes to happen, but thankfully Roman's walked away, obviously, from that crash.
Yeah, I mean, it was scary because we saw a red flag. I mean, it doesn't mean that it's immediately a bad thing, but I saw a lot of fire, and I was like, that's not a good thing. But yeah, luckily, I mean, he's, let's say, okay. So yeah, I hope he will recover fast again.
And obviously the fight to Lewis, where exactly was that? You could see just a little bit of pace missing today. Were they just a step in front that they were untouchable?
Yeah, we're just lacking a bit. I tried to keep it, close, but yeah, they always had an answer. And I think besides that also, yeah, we didn't really went aggressive enough, I think, with the strategy. And then we had a slow pit stop. So yeah, it is what it is. Second is not bad.
And next week, is that track layout going to suit you a bit better?
Normally not, with the amount of extra straight which is coming in. But we'll see. I mean, the car seems to work quite well around here, so hopefully we can find a little bit more pace through the corners, which are left on the other track, and then we'll see again.
Excellent. And we're just waiting on Lewis, obviously, to come in. Lewis, congratulations. I think firstly what we should touch on is just how much the FIA, the GPDA put safety first into this sport. And having seen what happened to Roman, I've seen all the drivers looking at the screen obviously before you got back in the car to go back out and do that race.
Yeah, I mean it was such a shocking image to see. And the thing is, I mean you know Paul, like when we arrive, when I get in the car, I know that I'm taking risk. And I respect the dangers that are in this sport, and I think, I posted about it whilst I was in that break because I mean it's horrifying. I mean his car, the cockpit, I don't know what G's he pulled, but I'm just so grateful that the halo worked. I'm grateful that the barrier didn't slice his head up or something like that. It could have been so much worse. But I think it's a reminder to us, and hopefully to the people that are watching, that this is a dangerous sport, and that is why we are out there like pushing to the limit and playing with that limit. But you also have to respect it. But as I said, I think it's an amazing job shows the amazing job that Formula 1 has done, the FIA have done over time to be able to walk away from something like that. But of course, that will be investigated, and they will do a lot of work to try and make sure that that doesn't happen again.
The reaction has been quite incredible when you see it outside the car and when the race was going on with the world, how that's done. Sure. But then, textbook performance by you, Lewis, 7-time world champion. You went on and you dominated the race. It did look easy from the outside, but you said at the end of the race it was quite hard. Was Max pushing you all the way?
Yeah, it really was physically very demanding. I think with the break that we had at the beginning, you know, you get into a mindset, you go out and you've got a good start, and then that 45 to an hour wait that we had, so easy to step out of the zone. So that was quite tricky. But then getting back in, they had a lot of speed today, so I was flat out the whole way trying to keep them at bay. And yeah, it's physical. This track has always been physical. We got lots of high-speed corners, so I was definitely feeling it. And of course, I managed to just about reply to him when I needed to, but I was sliding around a lot out there, and I wasn't really quite sure how it would play out at the end. But I'm massively grateful, thankful to my team, you know, because they, at the end of the day, did a great job with the strategy. And what a privilege it is to be able to get another result like this.
Nice to see you happy, and enjoy the few days off, and we'll see you back here in 4 days' time.
Cheers.
Well, Lewis Hamilton getting his 11th win of the season, but that won't be the thing that this race is remembered for. What a dramatic Grand Prix, for all the wrong reasons really, but thankfully Romain Grosjean has been taken to hospital after a terrifying crash. He is being looked after there, and we will await further updates. Of course, you can follow that through the BBC Sport website. My thanks to Jack Nicholls, Jolyon Palmer, Andrew Benson and the team for getting us through what felt like at times a very difficult day. Thank you for listening as well. You can download the Checkered Flag podcast a little bit later as we talk about everything that was the Bahrain Grand Prix. But from all of us here, as I said, thanks again for listening. We'll speak to you next weekend when we can do it all again on the Outer Loop. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.